she had spent years scrubbing floors and changing sheets, but when she stepped into Suite 303 and locked eyes with the millionaire guest, her heart nearly stopped. The man who abandoned her, the father of her son, was standing right there, completely unaware of the secret she had kept for years. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. A single tear slid down Olivia's cheek as she wiped the last marble tile in the grand lobby of the Empire Crown Hotel. It was nearly midnight, and the bright chandeliers reflected on the spotless floor, mirroring her exhaustion. She had been working tirelessly all day, ensuring every corridor, suite, and salon gleamed with the kind of pristine perfection that the hotel's elite guests demanded. At 26, Olivia often wondered how life had led her to this exact moment, kneeling by a marble floor in an opulent New York luxury hotel, wearing a maid's uniform and carrying the weight of a secret that haunted her every waking hour. Outside, the rain pummeled the city streets, a relentless downpour that matched Olivia's inner turmoil. In the distance, drivers honked impatiently as they navigated traffic near Times Square's neon glare. Inside the hotel, however, all remained hushed except for the occasional footsteps of security passing by. Olivia sighed as she placed her cleaning rag into the bucket of soapy water. She had only minutes left before her shift ended and a manager would come by to verify her work. Her thoughts drifted to her little boy, Noah, who was likely already asleep in their small rented room across town. The image of his bright eyes and innocent smile warmed her heart, even after such a grueling day. Noah had just turned 6, and every day he reminded Olivia of both her greatest joy and her deepest pain. Olivia had raised him alone from birth. She had never once mentioned the name of his father in front of her co-workers, nor had she admitted to anyone in the city that Noah's father had no idea he existed. Standing up, she massaged the small of her back. Being a single mother demanded an almost superhuman level of strength. Nights like these, when she felt physically spent, her mind clung to the promise of tomorrow. Noah deserved a better future than a cramped apartment and a mother who rarely had time to catch her breath. But for now, this was her reality, and Olivia refused to complain. She had known adversity from a young age, growing up in a rural town, leaving home at 17 in search of opportunities, crossing paths with heartbreak and betrayal. And yet, the greatest trial had been the day she realized that the father of her unborn child was beyond her reach, both emotionally and financially. A whisper in her earpiece startled her. "Olivia? Front desk calling. Please finish with the suite checkups on the 30th floor. Our VIP guests are arriving tonight. Make sure everything's impeccable." She responded with a polite acknowledgement and set off to the service elevator, her cart of cleaning supplies rolling in front of her. The elevator doors opened into an elegant corridor lined with framed artwork and plush carpeting that absorbed every footstep. Suite 303, she noted, was the farthest corner. Sometimes working in such close proximity to wealth made her feel like an outsider in a world that wasn't hers. But the job was stable, and the pay was just enough to keep food on the table for her and her son. Moments later, Olivia found herself in front of the imposing double doors of Suite 303. The suite was rumored to be reserved exclusively for the wealthiest clients, celebrities, foreign dignitaries, and magnates whose fortunes spanned multiple continents. She had never cleaned it before. A more senior maid usually handled the VIP floors. Tonight, though, schedules had changed, and the responsibility fell to her. The door glided open with an understated click. As soon as Olivia stepped inside, she felt a wave of intimidation. The suite was enormous, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the city's sparkling skyline, a marble foyer, and the hush of thick, luxurious drapes. A grand piano stood by the far window, and the faint scent of fresh orchids lingered in the air. On a small glass table near the plush sofa lay an array of business magazines and financial newspapers. Everything was perfect. Her job was simply to confirm that the suite was immaculate for the upcoming VIP arrival. But something felt peculiar in this space, an indescribable heaviness as if fate itself had guided her into these rooms. She began her routine with professional rigor, checking the linen closet, restocking the bathroom's top-tier toiletries, adjusting the decorative pillows. As she passed the master bedroom, she noticed a row of fresh designer suits hanging in the walk-in closet. Several pairs of polished shoes were lined up meticulously below. Strange, she thought. The manager had insisted the VIP guest would arrive later, yet someone's wardrobe was already here. Perhaps a personal assistant had arrived in advance to prepare everything. With a shrug, Olivia continued her inspection. She moved to check the private terrace, noticing the distant hum of city traffic and the swirling storm clouds above. New York glowed with countless lights, a mix of possibility and heartbreak that she knew all too well. Just then, the suite's door clicked open from the foyer side. Olivia froze. No one was supposed to be inside yet. She had an instant urge to hide. She wasn't expecting the guest to arrive at this hour, and she felt awkward being caught mid-inspection. Carefully placing her cleaning cloth aside, she peered around the corner. A tall figure in a sleek charcoal suit entered, accompanied by two men who appeared to be bodyguards. The overhead light outlined a confident posture, broad shoulders, and a sharp, expensive haircut. Olivia's heart pounded at the realization that the occupant had arrived far earlier than planned. She took a step back, determined to slip out quietly without making a scene. But as she retreated, her shoes squeaked against the marble, echoing throughout the silent suite. The man turned, startled by the unexpected noise. Their eyes met in a moment that stretched longer than a heartbeat. Olivia's breath caught in her throat, and for a split second, she thought her mind must be playing tricks on her. The face in front of her was both achingly familiar and incomprehensibly distant. It was James Harrington, a name known to the entire country as a billionaire investor, the same man Olivia had met almost 7 years ago in a whirlwind night she had never truly recovered from. He froze with an expression that teetered between shock and confusion. Time seemed to stall as recognition flared behind his steel-blue eyes. James stepped forward, his once boyish features now sharpened by years of ambition and success. Olivia's knees nearly buckled beneath her as her mind swirled with memories. That single evening of warmth and laughter, the dashed hopes, the ensuing heartbreak, and the silent sacrifices that led her to raise her son alone. Noah's father, the man who vanished from her life, was now standing inches away, and he had no idea about the child who bore his last name in secret. The tension in the suite intensified. The bodyguards exchanged puzzled glances, uncertain whether the maid was a threat or a startled employee. The city lights beyond the windows flickered and thunder rolled in the distant sky. Neither Olivia nor James seemed capable of forming words. Emotions collided in Olivia's mind: fear, betrayal, longing. Her greatest secret and most painful memory had manifested in front of her, wearing a tailor-made suit and a gaze that threatened to unravel every carefully built wall. Finally, James parted his lips, but the only sound escaping was a soft exhale. Olivia realized she had to speak, to maintain her professional composure, yet all that came out was a tremulous whisper of his name. James. Before either could process what was happening, the overhead lights flickered for a moment. The storm outside intensified, casting shadows on the suite's polished floors. Olivia wanted to run. She wanted to escape this improbable reunion that threatened her entire world. She knew that if James learned the truth, her quiet life with Noah would never be the same. But it was too late. Fate had opened a door they both thought was sealed forever. The father of her child was once again in her life. Only this time, he was one of the wealthiest men on the planet and had no inkling of the secret that bound them together. Thunder rumbled over Manhattan, causing the windows of Suite 303 to tremble as if acknowledging the charged atmosphere within. Olivia stood rooted to the spot, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain James could hear it. 1,000 memories and unanswered questions flitted across her mind, colliding in a whirlwind of fear and disbelief. How many times had she imagined running into him again? In every fantasy she was strong and prepared, able to confront him with dignity. Instead, her voice caught in her throat, and her cheeks burned under his silent scrutiny. James didn't move. For a man accustomed to exuding confidence and poise, he seemed momentarily lost. His gaze roamed over Olivia's features, surprise etched across his handsome face. Then, recognition flared in his eyes, compelling him to take an involuntary step forward. He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. Every line of his expression signaled equal parts astonishment and confusion. "Olivia?" he managed, voice taut. His bodyguards exchanged perplexed looks, clearly unsure if the woman before them was a threat or simply an employee caught in an awkward moment. The tension simmered, crackling like static in the air. Olivia fought the overwhelming urge to turn on her heel and flee. Yet standing before the father of her child, this man she had known only for a brief, passionate evening, she realized running was no longer an option. Destiny had orchestrated a reunion she never thought possible. She cleared her throat, grateful for the noise of the storm that helped disguise her trembling breath. "Sir," she said, forcing composure into her tone, "I'm sorry if I startled you. I was just finishing a final inspection." She clutched the cleaning rag in her hand, clinging to it as though it might grant her the courage she needed. James's eyebrows pressed together. He looked over his shoulder at the bodyguards. "Leave us," he ordered quietly. There was no hesitation in the men's compliance. They exited to the hallway at once, leaving the two alone under the glow of a gold chandelier. Outside, lightning flashed, briefly casting elongated shadows of them both across the marble floor. When the suite's door clicked shut, James exhaled, ragged and unsure. "It's been years." His voice brimmed with disbelief. I never imagined—" He paused, searching her face. "How did you end up here?" Olivia lowered her head, focusing on a single scuff on the tile rather than his piercing gaze. She could hardly explain the lifetime of changes that had occurred since that ill-fated night. Fear twisted in her stomach. Any mention of Noah might send James reeling, or worse, might jeopardize the fragile life she'd built. "I've been working here for a while," she replied softly, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her uniform collar felt tight, and her mouth was painfully dry. James took another step, bridging the distance between them. He looked the same, and yet utterly transformed, no longer the spirited dreamer with whom she'd shared laughter in a shabby bar all those years ago. Now, he wore the polished aura of a mogul, whose every move dictated headlines. But beneath the expensive watch and custom suit, some part of him remained the same man she once trusted enough to share her body and her dreams. Outside, the storm grew more insistent, the wind a mournful wail against the glass. For a moment, neither spoke, lost in a tumult of unspoken thoughts. Finally, James cleared his throat, adopting the tone of a businessman needing immediate clarity. "When did you start at the Empire Crown?" he asked. His question sounded far too professional, as though he were interviewing her instead of reeling from the shock of seeing her again. "About a year ago. I needed stability," Olivia answered carefully. She was desperate to maintain her composure. The very air between them felt fragile, as though one careless word could shatter whatever delicate peace remained. A loud crack of thunder interrupted them, and both involuntarily glanced toward the windows. The city lights shimmered in the watery haze, accentuating the dreamlike quality of the encounter. James ran a hand through his neatly styled hair, messing it slightly, one of the only outward signs he was truly unsettled. "I want to talk," he said, his voice gentler now. "I realize this is unexpected, but please," his tone almost pleaded, "let's sit, just for a moment." Olivia pressed her lips together, anxiety coursing through her veins. Perhaps she should say no. Perhaps she should vanish and never speak to him again. Yet she also understood this confrontation was inevitable. If not here, if not tonight, then soon. With trembling fingers, she set down her cleaning rag on a side table, nodding her assent. They crossed the plush living area and settled onto a sleek sofa upholstered in champagne-colored fabric. James's phone buzzed, but he ignored it, keeping his attention fixed solely on Olivia. She wondered if he noticed the small, almost imperceptible dark circles under her eyes, a testament to nights spent soothing Noah from fever or nightmares. A wave of maternal protectiveness rushed through her, reminding her that their conversation had stakes that James couldn't possibly fathom. "How have you been?" James asked. I thought you left the city." Olivia inhaled shakily. "I did leave for a while. Things got complicated. I had no safety net, no real direction. Eventually I realized New York was still where the best opportunities might be." She studied her hands, recalling the scattered days of her pregnancy, the tumult of deciding how to raise a child alone. The question gnawed at her. Should she reveal Noah's existence right now? But James, apparently sensing her discomfort, shifted in his seat. "I never forgot you," he admitted quietly, searching her face. "After that night, I tried to track you down. I went back to the bar, but the owner said you'd quit suddenly. I didn't have your number or any way to reach you." Something in Olivia's chest tightened. He had looked for her. She had never imagined that was possible. She'd been convinced she was nothing but a passing fling to a charismatic young man who vanished from her life. Without meaning to, she blurted, "You disappeared. No goodbye, no message." He swallowed, regret flashing across his features. "I received news that my father was ill. I had to fly out immediately to Europe, handle a crisis at our family's business. I assumed I'd be gone for a week at most, but it escalated. By the time I came back, you were nowhere to be found. It wasn't intentional, Olivia." Her emotions churned: anger, relief, confusion. The version of events she'd replayed in her mind for years never involved an explanation like this. She'd convinced herself that James simply hadn't cared, that she'd been a single, disposable evening in an otherwise glamorous life. Now, looking into his earnest gaze, she realized there was more nuance. Still, the pain of those lonely months, and the 6 years raising her son alone, couldn't be erased so easily by a few apologetic words. Leaning forward, James lowered his voice. "I don't want to push you, but I need to know. What happened after that night? Why didn't you wait? Why couldn't we keep in touch?" Olivia's pulse thundered. She forced herself to meet his eyes. With every syllable, she felt the gravity of a secret she had harbored for 6 entire years. "I didn't think there was a place for me in your life," she said, voice trembling. "You come from a world I never knew, with wealth and responsibilities. I barely had enough to pay rent. How was I supposed to fit in?" She almost said more, almost told him everything. But fear leapt up like a wall. What if he tried to take Noah away? James was unbelievably powerful. He owned corporations, flew private jets, possessed more resources than she could fathom. If he learned the truth about Noah, would he welcome his child or resent Olivia for withholding him? James's expression darkened with regret. "I'm sorry you felt that way. I never meant to abandon you, especially not in the sense you must have believed. He hesitated, the weight of unspoken feelings hanging in the air. Another flash of lightning cut across the window, illuminating them both. This was the instant of revelation, suspended in time. Olivia could sense that they stood on the cusp of a decision with life-altering consequences. She swallowed hard, steeling herself. All at once the words pressed at her lips. For so long she had wondered how this moment might unfold. In the hallway, the bodyguards spoke in hushed tones. The storm roared outside, carrying the city's frantic heartbeat in every gust of wind. Inside Suite 303, Olivia and James teetered at the precipice of a secret that could rip their lives apart or bind them together forever. The storm's thunderous roar provided a soundtrack to Olivia's jumbled thoughts as she hovered on the edge of confession. The reality of sharing her son's existence with James, this billionaire who dominated headlines, terrified her. And yet, the longing to unburden herself, to finally be honest, pushed her to speak. She could practically feel Noah's presence in her heart, reminding her of both the struggle and the boundless love that filled her daily life. Outside Suite 303, staff whispered to one another, uncertain why the VIP guest's door remained closed. Inside, lightning flashed across the windows, painting fleeting shadows on the suite's lavish walls. James leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying Olivia with an intensity that took her breath away. "I know I can't change the past," he said softly, "but please believe me. I never intended to hurt you. If there's even the slimmest chance we could move forward, I'd like to try." His words hung in the air. Olivia's chest felt tight. Move forward? The very notion felt simultaneously hopeful and terrifying. She thought of Noah, safe at home under the watchful eye of a kindly neighbor. Noah, who had James's dark hair and the same unwavering stare. Noah, who asked innocent questions about his father whenever he saw other kids playing with their dads in the park. How could she possibly bridge this 6-year gap without shattering the fragile structure of their lives? Her voice trembled despite her attempt to remain composed. "I appreciate your willingness to talk, James, but there's so much time we lost, so many things left unsaid." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm not the same person I was before." James gave a sad nod. "I'm not the same either. My father passed away 2 years ago, and suddenly I had the responsibility of our entire family corporation. The pressure was enormous." He sighed, memories flickering in his eyes. "Still, I never quite forgot the night we spent together. The warmth of it, the sense that I'd finally met someone who saw me for who I was, not just for my name." His candid admission made Olivia's pulse accelerate. Could he sense the unspoken truth lying between them? In the midst of her inner turmoil, the telephone on the side table beeped, shattering the quiet. Startled, Olivia glanced at the blinking red light. James pressed a finger to his lips, signaling her to wait, and snatched the receiver. "Yes," he answered, impatience creeping into his tone. The hotel manager's voice floated through, muffled and apologetic. They needed James's final approval on some details for his suite, menus, event scheduling, and so forth. He cut the manager off quickly. "Handle it. I'm occupied," he said curtly, setting the phone down with a controlled exhale. The short conversation acted like a shard of ice to the charged moment. Olivia stood, taking it as a cue to return to her professional duties. "I should go," she murmured, her eyes downcast to avoid betraying the swirl of emotion within. Yet the words left a heaviness in her chest. Part of her yearned to stay, to talk more, to see if there was a safe way to share the existence of their son. But fear had her in its grip. James rose immediately, closing the distance between them. "Wait, please," he said, gently laying a hand on her forearm. "I don't want to just let you walk away again." He swallowed, his voice taut with emotion. "I'm checking in here for at least 2 weeks. Business, meetings. Please let me see you again. Properly, outside of this hotel hierarchy." She hesitated. It felt surreal to imagine meeting him anywhere other than under these fluorescent lights, in the starched uniform that marked her job description. Meeting him as a woman with dignity, not a maid overshadowed by the difference in their social status. Would it help them find closure, or might it unravel more than Olivia was prepared to confront? She managed a whisper that barely carried over the distant rumble of thunder. "Why, James? What would we even talk about? For a moment his eyes flickered with frustration, as though he was grappling with a puzzle missing vital pieces. I don't know. Everything. The years apart. Your life. He paused, and his voice dipped lower, more tentative. I'd like to understand what happened, why you left without a trace, why there's this barrier between us. I'm not expecting miracles, I want honesty. Honesty. The word hung in Olivia's mind like a bell, tolling her guilt. The truth was big, complicated, and deeply personal. Yet in James's gaze, she saw a genuine determination, as if her explanation could relieve him of a regret he'd carried for years. Did he deserve to know that regret had been overshadowed by the deeper, more pressing demands of parenthood? She took a trembling breath, feeling the frustration of her predicament. Maybe, she conceded softly, maybe I can explain some things, but I need time. A relieved smile lit James's features. Time, of course. Whatever you need. Olivia mustered a small nod, stepping out of his reach as though crossing an invisible border that separated their worlds. I still have rounds to finish, she said, glancing at the cleaning supplies left near the sofa. But if you'd like to talk later, maybe I can send you my phone number. James's face brightened at her suggestion. Yes, please. He reached into his suit pocket, retrieving a sleek silver pen and a small notepad typically reserved for financial notes or property addresses. Here, he said. Write it down, or do you have yours memorized? Holding the pen, Olivia's hand felt unsteady. She jotted down her cell number, aware she could no longer hide behind unlisted addresses or new phone lines. Once he had this number, he would have a direct line to her life. But each stroke of the pen felt both liberating and terrifying. She handed him the slip of paper, her heart pounding. James carefully folded it and tucked it away inside his suit jacket. The gesture, though simple, carried a weight that made Olivia's throat tighten. She looked at him then, really looked, and saw not just the polished billionaire but the memory of a kind-hearted young man who once brought her a simple flower from a street vendor, just because she'd mentioned how much she loved daisies. I'll be in touch, he promised, his voice quiet yet resolute. And thank you for not running out that door. She offered a wavering smile, then retrieved her cleaning cart. Navigating around the plush chairs and crystal vases, she forced herself not to glance back at James. Her entire body buzzed with adrenaline, and she worried she might collapse the moment she stepped out of the suite. But each stride toward the door was a step forward in confronting the past she had long avoided. The corridor outside felt warmer, safer. She exhaled, leaning momentarily against the wall, letting the day's events seep in. She needed to get home to Noah to reassure herself that her stable little world had not cracked irreparably. Tonight she would hold him close, listening to his gentle breathing. She'd wonder if she could ever truly share him with James. Would James accept a child he'd known nothing about? Or would Olivia be risking an even deeper heartbreak for both her and her son? She took a moment to steady her breathing, then headed back toward the staff elevator. A passing coworker gave her a nod, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing within her. The manager's voice crackled in her earpiece again, directing her to another floor, to another task. Duty beckoned her to remain calm, but inside, her thoughts spiraled, a collision of hope, apprehension, and the elusive possibility of a future in which her son knew his father. No matter what happened next, this one truth felt certain. The precarious balance she'd managed for 6 years was shifting. James Harrington was back in her life, a man more powerful than she dared imagine. And hidden in the small apartment across town was a bright-eyed boy who carried his father's features, waiting for a bedtime story that might soon change forever. The drive back home was a silent affair. Once her shift ended, Olivia slipped into the back seat of a battered rideshare car, staring out at the rain-slicked roads. Exhaustion weighed her down, and no matter how tightly she closed her eyes, she saw James's face in her mind, the flash of concern, the curve of his mouth when he half smiled. Her thoughts turned to practical matters. If he truly wanted answers, she would have to figure out how to tell him about Noah in a way that wouldn't turn her life into chaos, because chaos felt all too real a possibility. James was no ordinary man. He belonged to a world of boardrooms, shareholder meetings, and paparazzi. She couldn't even fathom what might happen if tabloids learned that the Harrington Empire had an heir born in secret. At last, she arrived at her apartment building, an unremarkable aging structure with chipped paint and flickering hallway lights. She tipped the rideshare driver with what little change she had and hurried inside, mindful of the squeaking floors. A neighbor occasionally left an old radio playing softly, and the hum of a local station followed Olivia as she climbed to the third floor. The door to her unit creaked open, revealing a modest living room where mismatched furniture filled the cramped space. She spotted a dim glow from the small lamp near the couch, and relief washed over her when she saw the neighbor, Ms. Bernice, flipping through a magazine. She was a gentle retiree who offered to keep an eye on Noah whenever Olivia worked late. "How was work, dear?" Ms. Bernice asked kindly, her voice low so as not to wake Noah. "It was eventful." Olivia managed a tight smile, but her eyes betrayed her turmoil. "Thank you again for staying." "No trouble. Little man's fast asleep." Ms. Bernice stood, gathering her handbag and heading for the door. "Everything okay? You look a bit pale." Olivia hesitated. Confiding in anyone, even Ms. Bernice, felt risky. "Just tired," she whispered finally. "Long shift." With a sympathetic nod, Ms. Bernice left, closing the door softly behind her. Olivia stepped into the bedroom she shared with her son. Noah lay curled under a patchwork quilt, his mouth slightly open, one arm flung across the pillow. Peace radiated from his small form, reminding Olivia why she had sacrificed so much to keep him safe. Quietly, she slipped off her shoes and changed into an old t-shirt and shorts. She sat on the edge of the bed, brushing her fingers gently through Noah's dark hair. In sleep, he resembled James more than ever. The similarity was undeniable, the same thick lashes, the same subtle arch in his brows. Tonight, it was impossible to pretend otherwise. As thunder rolled in the distance, Olivia pulled the quilt more securely around Noah's shoulders. She vowed to protect him no matter what, even if that meant shielding him from the father who had unknowingly left them behind. But glancing at Noah's peaceful face, she couldn't deny that a fragment of her heart yearned for a life where father and son could recognize each other. A family, a second chance, words that once felt too big to imagine. Sleep beckoned, but her mind raced with questions. Would James call? Would he show up unexpectedly? What if he demanded to meet her child? Fear and hope collided, refusing her any simple answers. With trembling hands, she turned off the small lamp. In the darkness, she listened to Noah's breathing and the beating of her own heart. She had learned long ago that every choice carried consequences, but none had been as dire or far-reaching as the one she faced now. Tomorrow, everything might change. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains in Olivia's modest apartment, painting the walls with a subdued glow. She blinked awake, momentarily disoriented, until the sound of distant car horns reminded her it was another day in New York. A soft weight pressed against her side, and she turned to see Noah curled up with a stuffed dinosaur, his dark lashes resting on his cheeks. The peace of that simple moment almost made her forget the storm of the night before, both the literal thunder and the emotional cyclone named James Harrington. In the kitchen, Olivia started the coffee maker, rubbing her eyes and mentally rehearsing the day's tasks. She had no missed calls on her phone, which was both a relief and a source of gnawing uncertainty. Would James phone her at all? Or had he decided to bury last night's encounter and move on with his life? She paused to check her reflection in the dull metal of the toaster. Exhaustion clung to her, but a faint spark in her eyes hinted at a renewed sense of purpose. She might not know what to do about James yet, but she did know that Noah's needs were her top priority. The smell of coffee soon mingled with the gentle warmth of the early sun, and she wondered if it was foolish to hope for some kind of future that felt less secretive. A soft murmur from the bedroom signaled that Noah was stirring. She poured him a small glass of juice and some cereal, hoping to start the morning routine on a calm note. As she set the table, she couldn't help recalling James's earnest expression. He had asked for time. She'd given him her number. Now each minute stretched with apprehension. Would her phone buzz with a message from him? Noah padded into the room, pajamas rumpled. "Mommy, I'm hungry." His voice was still thick with sleep. "Morning, baby." She drew him close, savoring the comforting scent of his tousled hair. "I made your favorite cereal. Eat up, and then we'll get you dressed for school." Noah settled at the table, swinging his small legs. "Ms. Bernice said you came home late. Did you have to clean a lot?" She forced a smile, determined to keep her voice light. "I did. It was a busy night, but everything went fine." It was an incomplete truth. She hoped a time would come when she could share more. Once Noah began eating, Olivia's phone chimed unexpectedly as if on cue. Her heart skipped. Reaching for it, she stared at the screen to see an unknown number. The text read, "Hi, Olivia, it's James. I realize it's early. Sorry if this wakes you. Would love to meet today if you're free. Let me know. No pressure." Her breath caught. She glanced at Noah, who was pouring more cereal into his bowl, oblivious to the significance of that one message. Quickly, she typed a reply, her fingers clumsy from nerves. "Good morning. I'm up. Have to take my son to school, then work a short shift. I finish around 3 p.m. She hesitated, then added, "We could meet at the cafe near 8th and Delancey around 4 p.m. if that suits you." She hesitated again, pressing send before she could overthink it. James's response came almost immediately. 4 p.m. is perfect. See you then." Olivia set the phone aside, heart fluttering. She swallowed the surge of uncertainty. This was happening. The father of her child wanted to see her, alone, and she had only hours to figure out how or if she might disclose the truth. She felt as though she was walking a tightrope over an abyss. One misstep, and everything could topple. "Mommy!" Noah's voice interrupted her anxious thoughts. He'd finished his cereal and was looking at her with an endearing tilt of the head. "Is something wrong?" She knelt by his side, ruffling his hair. "Just grown-up stuff, sweetie, don't worry. Finish up and let's get you ready for school." Traffic was its usual cacophony of blaring horns and idling engines when Olivia maneuvered through crowded streets, leading Noah by the hand. The boy chattered excitedly about an upcoming art project at school. Listening to him helped Olivia steady her racing heart, pulling her focus back to the moment. She'd never been one to run from challenges, but her motherly instincts roared to life at the mere thought of telling James about Noah. This wasn't just her story anymore, it was Noah's too. After dropping her son off, she caught the subway downtown. The rickety car lurched over the tracks, each screech a harsh reminder of the city's frenetic energy. She clutched the metal pole, mind drifting between preparations for her short shift at the hotel and the upcoming conversation with James. She dreaded the possibility that he might react with anger or accusations. But another part of her, a smaller, more hopeful part, wondered if maybe he would embrace the news. When she arrived at work, the lobby staff bustled past her with hurried greetings, barely noticing the swirl of turmoil behind her polite nods. The Empire Crown Hotel soared above her, all glass and polished steel. The same place where James now resided, where he had discovered her after years of separation. Standing in the staff locker room, she donned her uniform with shaking hands. Her colleagues carried on mundane conversations about weekend plans and scheduling conflicts. Nobody suspected the storm inside Olivia's thoughts. She reminded herself to breathe, to do her job with the same diligence as always. The hours until her shift ended seemed both too short and too long. too short to fully prepare for James's questions, too long in the sense that she could hardly wait for the confrontation to be over. By 2:45 p.m., Olivia was methodically restocking housekeeping supplies at the back of the hotel's service area. Her manager had stepped out, leaving Olivia alone in a cramped storeroom lined with shelves of spare sheets, towels, and miniature toiletries. The repetitive task was oddly soothing. Counting items and arranging them in neat stacks momentarily calmed her anxious thoughts. She felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. Heart pounding, she checked to see yet another text from James. "Any chance you're free earlier than 4? I'm just finishing a meeting. If not, I'm happy to wait." Her fingers hovered over the screen. She quickly typed, "Sorry, can't leave before 3. We'll see you at 4. Is everything okay?" He replied, "Yes, just eager to see you. No rush." That final punctuation, a simple smile, somehow comforted her. James had always possessed a gentle side, overshadowed perhaps by the grandeur of his name and fortune. She thought back to the younger man she'd once known, who'd teased her with jokes, who bought daisies in the middle of the night just to watch her smile. Could that side of him survive the world he now ruled from penthouses and board meetings? Time edged forward. She finished her tasks promptly, turned in her shift report, and gathered her things. She felt a pang of nervousness as she exited the staff entrance. What if James was already waiting out front? But no, only the usual swirl of taxis and weary travelers. Taking a steadying breath, she hurried toward the subway station. The cafe near 8th and Delancey was a cozy establishment with exposed brick walls and large windows that allowed the waning afternoon sunlight to spill onto wooden tables. Painted with cheerful murals, it was the kind of place local artists frequented, giving it a bohemian vibe at odds with the city's corporate bustle. Olivia arrived just before 4 p.m., scanning the faces at each table. James wasn't there yet. Relief mingled with disappointment. She chose a small table near the back, where she could watch the door without feeling too conspicuous. Minutes ticked by, and the knot in her stomach tightened. She wrapped her hands around the cafe's ceramic mug, letting the warmth seep into her palms. Was it silly to be this anxious? Possibly, but she had a right to be. She was on the verge of possibly telling the father of her son exactly who that son was. At 4:07, James walked in. Heads turned in his wake. He was the type of man who drew attention without trying. The tailored suit, the chiseled jaw, and that hint of confidence exuding from every gesture. Yet his eyes sought her out instantly, and when he spotted her, relief brightened his features. Crossing the cafe in brisk strides, he removed his sleek overcoat and draped it over a chair before taking a seat across from her. "You came," she said quietly. He offered a small, genuine smile. "I said I would." His gaze flickered over her face, concern emerging as he noticed how tense she was. "How are you?" "I'm okay." A lie, perhaps, but a gentle one. James signaled to a passing waitress, who approached with a menu. "Anything for you both?" she asked politely, clearly dazzled by James's presence. He gave a quick request for an espresso, and Olivia ordered a mint tea, her stomach too knotted for anything heavier. When they were alone again, he folded his hands on the table, pausing as if uncertain how to begin. "I'm glad you agreed to see me. There's a lot I want to ask you, but I don't want to push." She stared into her teacup, heart accelerating. "You're free to ask," she managed, her voice quieter than she intended. He leaned closer, tone hushed. "After that night years ago, I felt like we had a connection that went beyond a passing fling, but when I came back and you were gone..." His jaw tightened, as though reliving the memory still stung. "I told you about my father's illness. That was all-consuming, yet the regret never left me. I should have tried harder." She swallowed, each word of his an echo of her own regrets. "It was complicated, James. I didn't have the resources to go searching for you, and I was scared. You come from a world so different from mine." He nodded, eyes intent. "I get that. But if I had known..." A flicker of pain crossed his face. "I just wish I could have been there for you." Olivia's throat felt tight as she steeled herself for the truth. The fleeting clang of cups and laughter from other patrons seemed distant. "James," she started, forcing herself to look him in the eye. "There's something I need to tell you, about what happened afterward. About me." She paused, the tension climbing in her chest. Every inch of him seemed to brace for her words. "I'm listening." In that tiny instant, the coffee shop felt like it held its breath. Olivia's pulse thudded. She opened her mouth, preparing to voice the truth she had concealed for 6 long years. A truth named Noah. "After that night," she began, but the next words lodged in her throat. Before she could continue, the waitress returned with their drinks, flashing a bright smile. The sudden interruption forced Olivia to pull back. She inhaled sharply, trying to calm the surge of adrenaline. James gave a polite "thank you," watching the waitress retreat before refocusing on Olivia. She avoided his eyes, stirring her tea to buy herself a moment. Telling him in public, in front of curious patrons, felt dangerously exposed. Maybe she needed more privacy, more time to prepare for the torrent of emotion this revelation would unleash. He sensed her hesitation and reached across the table, lightly covering her hand with his. "Hey," he said gently, leaning in. "We can go somewhere else if you'd rather. We don't have to do this here." His quiet empathy nearly undid her. She swallowed the lump in her throat. "Yes, maybe that's best," she whispered. "Could we walk? It's a nice day outside and there's a park a few blocks away." James nodded without hesitation, already placing cash on the table for their drinks. "Of course. Let's go." Relief mixed with a strange dread as she rose. The tension in her shoulders refused to ease. Her eyes drifted to her phone, thinking of Noah's school schedule. She had a short window before she had to pick him up. If she revealed the truth now, would James demand to see him today? She couldn't let her mind spiral. Step by step, she told herself. Confession first, then she would handle the rest. As they exited onto the bustling sidewalk, neither noticed the subtle figure in a dark hoodie leaning against a nearby lamppost. Eager to remain unseen, he adjusted his phone's camera, capturing a few quick shots. In the city that never slept, anonymity was a luxury neither of them truly had, especially not James Harrington, whose every public move stirred the interest of opportunists and tabloids alike. Oblivious to that silent observer, Olivia and James turned the corner, side by side, the noise of traffic following them. She wondered if, by nightfall, James's entire world would be turned upside down, and whether her own, so carefully held together, would finally crumble. The late afternoon sun bathed the city streets in a warm, golden glow as Olivia and James navigated the bustling sidewalk. Horns blared in the distance, and pedestrians surged around them, everyone with somewhere to be. They walked side by side, careful not to bump shoulders with the throng of office workers heading home. Although they barely spoke, an electric anticipation pulsed between them, building toward the moment Olivia would finish what she had tried to say in the cafe. Just a block ahead, a neighborhood park offered an oasis of green amidst concrete towers. Olivia led James through a decorative wrought-iron gate, and the atmosphere softened immediately. Parents supervised toddlers on a small playground, joggers circled a paved path, and older couples rested on benches beneath leafy trees that rustled in a mild breeze. Searching for privacy, Olivia spotted an empty bench near a pond where ducks glided lazily. They sat down, the air carrying a hint of fresh grass and pond water. Sunlight filtered through the branches overhead, casting dancing shadows across the bench. For a moment, neither spoke. The city's din seemed miles away, muffled by the park's gentle calm. Olivia inhaled slowly, willing her heart to steady. This was the best chance she'd have to reveal the secret she'd guarded for 6 years. James was the first to break the silence. "Thank you for agreeing to talk. I know this can't be easy." He glanced sideways, his expression open, tinged with concern. "If there's anything you want me to know, whatever it is, I'm prepared to hear it." Bracing herself, Olivia clenched her hands on her lap. "I've thought about what to say to you so many times," she began softly. "But actually doing it is—" She paused, clearing her throat. "It's terrifying." James turned to face her fully. "Take your time." She closed her eyes, inhaling the crisp air, then exhaled. "After that night we spent together, I was alone, James. Really alone. You'd disappeared and I had no way of contacting you, but—" She swallowed, her pulse thrumming in her ears. "I soon discovered I was pregnant." Silence seemed to flood the park, even though children still squealed on the playground and joggers' footsteps thudded on the path. James's eyes widened, understanding striking him like a bolt of lightning. "Pregnant?" he repeated, voice barely above a whisper. Olivia nodded, tears pricking at her eyes. "Yes. I found out about a month after you left." Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to continue. "I had no money, no family support. I was scared. I worried what you or your family might do if you found out. You're wealthy, powerful. I couldn't imagine we'd be welcome in your world." James's expression melted into anguish mixed with shock. Why didn't you tell me? I would have helped. I would never have turned you away." She tried to compose herself, ignoring the sting in her throat. "I didn't know that. I only saw a man who vanished after one night. I thought maybe you'd known and chose to leave, or that I was just a fling. By the time I realized you'd gone for genuine reasons, it was too late. I was pregnant, alone, and had no clue how to reach you." Shoving trembling fingers through his hair, James breathed in and out, grappling with the realization. "So, you had our baby?" His voice quivered, eyes flicking to meet hers, desperate for confirmation. "Yes," she admitted, a tear slipping free. "His name is Noah. He just turned 6. A wave of emotion contorted James's features, and he had to look away, blinking rapidly. He gripped the edge of the bench so tightly his knuckles turned white. 6 years? I have a son?" He whispered the question, as though doubting his own voice. Olivia's next exhale shook with pent-up tension. "Yes, a son. He's healthy, bright, and wonderful. He looks so much like you at times, it's overwhelming." James swallowed hard, his gaze flickering across the pond, unfocused. The minutes stretched in silent upheaval, everything in his world tilting. Olivia watched him carefully, bracing for the anger or accusations she feared would erupt. Instead, he pressed his palms against his eyes, pulling them away moments later with a haunted look. 6 years, he repeated, as though trying to process the passage of time he'd lost. "You've been raising him alone this entire time?" She nodded, her voice a ragged whisper. "I had no choice. I had to survive. I moved around. I took whatever jobs I could find. Then about a year ago I landed steady work at the hotel." James inhaled sharply. "And you never once tried to contact me?" Hurt sparked in Olivia's chest. "I had no phone number, no address. All I knew was your name and that you were from some prominent family. And by the time I pieced everything together, I was convinced you'd never intended to stay in my life." He lowered his head, his dark hair catching flickers of sunlight. "If I'd known," he murmured, "I would have been there, Olivia. I swear it." A little boy's laughter echoed nearby as he chased a squirrel along the path, and Olivia bit her lip, imagining Noah in that moment. She couldn't deny the pang of regret that James had missed out on those first smiles, that first time Noah called her Mama, his first steps. But then she also remembered the sleepless nights, the bills that went unpaid, and the unrelenting worry about how to feed and clothe her child. Steeling herself, she reached out and lightly touched James's arm. "I'm sorry," she said softly, "but I didn't know how to handle it. For years I told myself that I was protecting Noah, that it was better for him not to be entangled in a life of privilege where we didn't belong. But when I saw you last night, I realized maybe I've been protecting my own heart too. James covered her hand with his own, his voice thick. God, Olivia, you don't know how much I wish I could go back in time. Not just for me, but for him. An unexpected wave of sympathy coursed through her. I know. They lapsed into silence, letting the ambient sounds of the park fill the gap in their conversation. James's mind raced with what it meant to be a father. He had always envisioned one day passing on his family's legacy, teaching a child to ride a bike or reading bedtime stories in a penthouse overlooking the city. But now, that child was already 6, with established routines, first days of school, and a life James had never touched. "How is he?" James asked, breaking the hush. "Noah. What's he like?" Despite her tears, a small smile tugged at Olivia's lips. "He's bright, curious. He loves dinosaurs and can list at least 10 different species by heart. He's got this sweet habit of doodling them in his notebooks. He's also sensitive, hates seeing anyone hurt or upset." A hint of pride shone in her eyes. "He's my whole world, James." James's expression wavered between awe and regret. "I wish I'd known sooner. I missed so much." Her hand slipped away from his arm, folding back into her lap. "It's not too late. If—" She hesitated, an entire universe of ifs swarming in her mind. If James truly wanted to know Noah, if he could accept the boy as his own, if he could respect the life she had built so carefully. James's phone buzzed, a rude intrusion from the outside world. He ignored it at first, but after a second insistent vibration, he retrieved it from his pocket, glancing at the screen. His brow furrowed in irritation. "I'm sorry," he muttered, silencing the device. "Work never stops. But this is more important." Olivia released a weighted breath, fiddling with the hem of her sweater. "If you want to meet him, we'll have to do this carefully. Noah doesn't know anything about you. About his father." A flicker of pain crossed James's face. "I understand. I don't want to turn his life upside down. Not if he's happy." She responded quietly. "He's happy. But he's also asked about his dad. Recently he's noticed other kids have fathers. I never knew what to say." James nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "Whatever you need, whatever Noah needs, I'll do. But you should know, Olivia, I'm not walking away from him." Relief and trepidation mingled in her chest. "Then we'll talk, plan how to introduce you. Slowly. He's only 6, and his world is small." She cast a glance over the park, aware of a creeping sense of danger. "We must be cautious, James. Your life isn't exactly private. If the media found out about an unknown heir—" He grimaced. "I know. The paparazzi and tabloids can be brutal, but we'll find a way. I won't let them hurt Noah." She managed a nod, comforted by his reassurance, though a nagging worry persisted. In the city's hidden corners, unscrupulous people might attempt to monetize any scandal involving the Harrington family, and just the thought of Noah's face plastered across tabloids made her blood run cold. Still, seeing the raw emotion in James's gaze stirred her compassion. He had lost 6 years, years he could never reclaim. And despite the potential upheaval, something about sharing the weight of single parenthood felt like a relief she'd never imagined. A light breeze rippled the surface of the pond, sending ducks scattering. James finally tore his gaze from her, staring at the tiny waves. "Thank you," he said hoarsely, "for telling me. I can't fix the past, but I promise I'll do right by you both." Olivia felt her heart ache with a mixture of hope and wariness. "I want to believe that," she whispered. "For Noah's sake, I hope it's true." They sat there quietly for another moment, letting the enormity of this new chapter settle in. Somewhere nearby, a small ice cream cart chimed its cheerful tune, a little girl squealed with delight, and the world continued spinning around them. Yet in that park, On that worn bench, Olivia and James felt time slow as they contemplated a future defined not just by regret, but by possibility. They left the park side by side, tension buzzing in the air like an electrical current. Although they had reached a fragile agreement to navigate this truth together, the logistics loomed. How to tell Noah, how to deal with James's public image, how to reconcile two vastly different worlds. Each block they traversed felt like a step further into unknown territory. To Olivia's surprise, James insisted on accompanying her to Noah's school. "At least let me see the building," he reasoned. "I promise to keep a low profile." Reluctantly, she agreed. They took a short cab ride in charged silence. Her mind spun with apprehension. Was it wise for James to see even the outside of Noah's school? But she also understood his yearning. If she had been denied knowledge of Noah's existence for so long, she might feel the same urge to glimpse the place her child spent his days. When they arrived at the school's modest entrance, the chatter of children echoed from the yard. Parents stood around, waiting for dismissal. James stepped out of the cab behind Olivia, immediately drawing curious glances from a few onlookers. He carried himself with effortless grace, his expensive suit starkly out of place in the low-key neighborhood. Olivia paused, turning to him. "This is it," she said quietly, gesturing to the front doors. Her nerves rattled. "Noah's class gets out in a few minutes, but maybe you shouldn't be here when he comes out." "Not yet." James nodded, looking both determined and resigned. "I understand." Together they lingered near a fence, far enough from the crowd that Noah wouldn't spot them upon exiting. Every passing minute seemed heavier. Finally, the bell rang and a flood of children poured onto the sidewalk with backpacks and excited chatter. Olivia's heart clenched as she recognized the familiar mop of dark hair among them. Noah was hand in hand with a classmate, discussing something animatedly, face lit with a bright grin. James inhaled sharply, emotion gripping him. "He looks so grown," he murmured, voice raw. From this distance, he absorbed every detail, Noah's carefree laughter, the shape of his small nose and chin echoing James's own. A swirl of regret and longing passed across James's face. Noah spotted Olivia. "Mommy!" he called cheerfully, releasing his friend's hand. He raced forward, backpack bouncing on his shoulders. A wide smile illuminated his face, eyes crinkling in joy. Olivia stooped to greet him, arms wide. "Hey, buddy, how was your day?" While Noah launched into a giddy explanation of a new dinosaur coloring sheet, James hovered behind, half concealed by the fence's angle. He watched, silent and transfixed, witnessing a moment that most parents took for granted. The pang in his chest felt overwhelming, like a missed heartbeat. Unaware of the extra pair of eyes, Noah concluded, "And Ms. Carlson said my T-Rex was the best in the class." Olivia forced a laugh, ruffling his hair. "I can't wait to see it." She swallowed, glancing covertly at James. She saw the sorrow etched into his features and felt an ache in her own heart. This was no time to introduce them. Not yet. Noah's life might shatter with confusion if she dropped the news in the middle of a sidewalk. Taking Noah's hand, she began to walk away. She cast one final glance over her shoulder at James. Their eyes met, his flooded with gratitude and longing, hers tinged with worry and a reluctant hope. Then she turned back, heading down the street with Noah in tow, leaving James to watch them disappear into the city's endless current. Standing alone, James let out a shaky breath. Reality hit him harder than any business deal he'd ever faced. He had a son who was already forging his own identity, whose life he knew nothing about. And though his heart brimmed with a mix of awe and grief for lost time, an unwavering resolve ignited in him. He would find a way to be the father Noah deserved, no matter how complicated or painful the path might be. Just as James signaled for a waiting car, he felt the vibration of his phone. Retrieving it, he saw an anonymous text. "I have photos you might want to see, unless you prefer them in tomorrow's headlines." Contact me for details." A chill crawled across James's skin. Who had photographed him and Olivia, and how much had they captured? Fury mixed with dread. He had just discovered he was a father, and already the vultures circled. Glancing back toward the route Olivia had taken, he clenched his jaw, promising himself he would protect them both, no matter who threatened to profit off their lives. He climbed into the back seat of his car, gravel crunching under the tires as it pulled away from the curb. The city's skyline rose ahead, its endless windows glinting in the late afternoon sun. Within that shimmering maze, fresh trials awaited. Blackmail, tabloids, and a child who needed answers. But James clung to a single certainty. Fatherhood was not an obligation he intended to shirk. Whatever the cost, he was resolved to step up and claim the family he never knew he had. Olivia's footsteps sounded hollow in the quiet hallway of her apartment building. Balancing Noah's backpack and her own purse on one arm, she unlocked the door to their small unit. A distinct unease, the product of the day's revelations, shadowed her thoughts. She couldn't stop picturing James standing outside Noah's school, his expression so raw and unguarded. The pang of guilt for depriving her son of a father for 6 years gnawed at her heart. But she also remembered her desperation during that pregnancy. No resources, no hope of even locating James if she tried, and the certainty that his ultra-wealthy family might look upon her with disdain. Noah ran ahead, dropping his backpack on the floor. "Mommy, can I show you my dinosaur drawing now?" His voice radiated excitement, oblivious to the tension that filled Olivia's chest. She forced a smile, pushing aside her worry for his sake. "Of course, baby. Let's take a look." Dropping her keys on the small table by the door, she crouched down while Noah fished out his drawing from a folder. It depicted a bright green T-Rex with spiky teeth, pretty fearsome for a 6-year-old's creation. Olivia praised his work, tracing a finger over the uneven crayon lines. "Wow, Noah, you're getting so good. This T-Rex looks ready to stomp around." He grinned proudly, then scampered to the kitchen. "Can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" The sight of his animated face warmed Olivia's heart. She could almost forget the swirling chaos in her life. "Sure thing," she said, following him. "But you need to promise me you'll eat some vegetables too." Noah wrinkled his nose theatrically. "Okay, Mommy. Broccoli, I guess." His mock reluctance made her laugh. She set about preparing a simple meal. While water boiled for the pasta, she busied herself chopping the broccoli, stealing glances toward Noah rummaging in the living room for his box of crayons. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, and her pulse instantly spiked. With James's reemergence, every ring or message felt more critical than ever. Drying her hands on a towel, she checked the screen. It was James. "Just wanted to see if you and Noah got home safely. Hope all is well." Her chest tightened, an unfamiliar blend of comfort and anxiety. She replied, "Yes, we're home, making dinner. He has no idea you were nearby." Within seconds, his response arrived. "I'm relieved. Let me know if you need anything, seriously. Anything at all." Olivia hesitated, considering how to reply. It felt odd having someone else, especially someone so powerful, offering support so openly. The warmth of his concern fought against her trepidation. "Thank you," she wrote back simply. "We're okay." She slipped the phone back into her pocket and turned her attention to stirring the pasta. Noah happily hummed a tune while coloring, unaware of how drastically their world was changing. In a lofty penthouse suite at the Empire Crown, James stood at the wide window, gazing at the neon tapestry of New York City below. The skyline glittered like a promise, but tonight he barely noticed its allure. His thoughts drifted to the image of Noah bounding out of school, beaming at Olivia. That boy he had only glimpsed from afar was his son. The significance weighed on him, both an ache and a revelation. With a sigh, he turned away, pacing the living area. Earlier, he'd received the anonymous text threatening to reveal pictures of him and Olivia. He had ignored follow-up messages so far, but the threat loomed. If those photos showed anything hinting at Noah's existence, tabloids would have a field day. The hotel's top-floor windows rattled faintly under the push of wind, but James's mind remained fixed on his predicament. He dialed his longtime personal attorney, a man well accustomed to crises. The call rang once before the attorney answered, a steely efficiency in his tone. "Mr. Harrington? Everything all right?" James grimaced. "I have a situation. Someone's threatening to sell photos of me, possibly with personal details. They used an unknown number, claiming they'd release them to the press. We need to handle it quietly." There was a brief silence on the line. "Understood. I'll look into tracing the number and advise on damage control. Do you have any idea what they might show?" James hesitated. "They might involve someone from my personal life I've just reconnected with. This stays confidential, Roger. I'm serious." "Of course. I'll assemble our security and legal teams. We'll keep it tight." Ending the call, James let out a breath, tension thrumming in his veins. He loathed the idea that Olivia and Noah could be targeted by unscrupulous opportunists. Today had already been life-altering. He wasn't about to let extortion or tabloid gossip overshadow the delicate steps needed to become a part of Noah's life. Despite the hour, James was too restless to sleep. He sank into one of the suite's plush armchairs, rubbing his temples as a mild headache pulsed. Every passing minute brought new questions. How would they tell Noah he had a father? What would Noah think of him? Would Olivia ever trust him enough to let him fill the role of a dad? His phone flashed again, and he braced for more blackmail attempts. Instead, it was a text from his mother, checking on him. Usually, he dismissed or postponed her messages. Their relationship had grown distant, overshadowed by the demands of the family business. But tonight, the mention of family meant something entirely different. He typed a quick reply, wrote "all is well" message, and tossed the phone aside, exhaling. Within him, a protectiveness he'd never felt bloomed into a fierce desire to shield his newfound family. He vowed to use every resource at his disposal to ensure no one exploited his son. Meanwhile, back in Olivia's apartment, dinner was finished, dishes washed, and Noah was in pajamas, yawning. She tucked him into bed, smoothing the blankets around his shoulders. "Mommy?" he asked, clutching his dinosaur plush. "Remember when I asked about my dad?" Her heart fluttered, startled by the timing. "Yes?" Noah's brown eyes searched hers. "Do you think he'll ever come back and meet me someday?" Olivia's throat tightened. In the dim glow of the bedside lamp, she stroked his hair gently. "Maybe," she whispered, forcing a small smile. "And if he does, I'll be with you every step of the way, okay?" Nodding, Noah let out a sleepy hum, his eyelids drooping. "Okay," he murmured, drifting into slumber within moments. Olivia lingered, watching his peaceful face. Could she ever have imagined that one day she'd be close to telling him the truth? After all those years of telling half answers to his questions, some families have just a mom or just a dad. The reality of James's existence was no longer something she could ignore. In the living room, her phone lay on the couch, a silent reminder of the bridge being built between her old life and James's world. She wondered if one simple text might open an avalanche of complications. Then again, perhaps it would also bring Noah something he'd always been missing. With no appetite for rest, she settled at the small kitchen table. She pulled out a tattered notebook, one she used to track finances and plan her busy schedule. Tonight, though, she flipped to a blank page, hesitated, and started writing down a few lines. Trying to organize her thoughts, she scribbled out, "Tell Noah there's someone who wants to meet him. Plan a safe, calm introduction. Somewhere comfortable. Ensure no press, no strangers around. Discuss boundaries with James." She paused, tapping the pen. A wave of uncertainty crashed over her. Was she naive to think they could keep this matter private? Billionaire heirs didn't exactly slip under the radar. One paparazzo, one leak, and their faces could be everywhere. Noah would be the child of a media sensation, something Olivia had tried desperately to avoid. But she remembered James's voice in the park, low and determined, "I won't let them hurt Noah." A small ember of trust ignited. James's sincerity felt genuine, and the memory of him watching Noah from across the schoolyard, his eyes filled with paternal longing, had shaken her. He cared, and the weight of that realization eased a fraction of her fear. Before long, she closed the notebook, exhaustion creeping up on her. Another day of housekeeping duties awaited, but more importantly, a day closer to the next conversation with James about how best to move forward. She whispered a goodnight to the shadows of her living room and headed to bed, where she curled beside Noah, like she had in the earliest years. The rhythmic rise and fall of his small body lulled her until eventually she drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning broke gray and damp, hinting at drizzle. At the Empire Crown, James was already awake, pacing with a phone pressed to his ear. His attorney, Roger, provided updates on the mysterious text messages. They traced the number to a disposable SIM card, making it nearly impossible to identify who was behind the threat. However, they did confirm that some digital photos of James and Olivia were being quietly shopped to lower-tier gossip sites. "It hasn't hit major outlets yet," Roger said, his tone brisk. "But if we don't act, it'll spread fast. People are curious about any new woman in your life, especially someone who doesn't fit the usual social circle." James clenched his free hand into a fist. "I'll pay to keep it under wraps, whatever it takes." "There's no guarantee hush money will keep them quiet," Roger cautioned. "We might want to craft a press statement preemptively or secure an injunction." Press statement? About his private life? When he'd just learned of his son's existence? James's annoyance flared. "Not yet. I'm not letting them manipulate me. Keep me posted." He ended the call, frustration knotting his forehead. He had a business empire to manage, global investors demanding his attention, yet his mind was fixated on protecting Olivia and Noah. The thought that unscrupulous vultures would exploit the situation enraged him. He'd fight it. He was a Harrington after all, and if there was one thing he'd inherited besides wealth, it was resolve. Scoffing at the idea of breakfast, James dressed in a crisp shirt and dark slacks, ignoring the suits lined up in his closet. Today he had no scheduled board meetings, but he needed to check in at the office to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Yet, at the forefront of his plans, he vowed to find a quiet hour to see Olivia again. They couldn't wait too long to address the next steps. Back in her cramped apartment, Olivia coaxed Noah through his morning routine, reminding him to brush his teeth longer and check his backpack for homework. She poured cereal for him and sipped coffee from a chipped mug. On the TV mounted to the wall, a local news channel droned about city council updates and weather. Normally, she paid it little attention, but a sudden mention of James Harrington caught her ear, making her freeze. She hurried to turn up the volume. A news anchor flashed a wide smile. Speculation continues around billionaire James Harrington's personal life. Sources claim he was seen in the company of an unidentified woman near Delancey Street. Our entertainment affiliates hint at exclusive photos emerging. Meanwhile, Harrington's representatives have declined to comment. Olivia's heart plummeted. She snatched up the remote, switching the TV off before Noah could catch on. Her hands shook. If the media was already buzzing, how long until they learned her name? Until Noah's face was plastered across tabloid pages? That afternoon, she arrived at the hotel for her shift with a heightened sense of paranoia. Every coworker's glance felt suspicious, as though they might have seen the segment. But in reality, they were all just busy or indifferent, preparing the elegant lobby for a new influx of guests. She slipped into the staff elevator, forcing herself to breathe. She needed to act normal. She just had to push through the day's tasks and avoid any slip that might draw attention. She checked her phone repeatedly, expecting a frantic message from James about the news report, but nothing came. Was he handling the crisis alone? Perhaps his silence meant he had it under control? Or maybe it was worse than she imagined. Mid-shift, she wheeled her cleaning cart through a plush corridor on the 10th floor. As she entered a suite to change linens, she paused. Her phone vibrated. Heart in her throat, she retrieved it, reading James's message. "I'm sorry about the media chatter. We're containing it. Are you okay?" She hurriedly typed back, mindful of her limited break time. "Saw the news. Worried. At work now. Will I see you later?" He replied quickly. "Yes. Let's meet soon. I'll arrange something secure. Don't worry. I'll protect you both." Olivia's breath caught. She hoped he was right. Hoped that his wealth and influence truly could shield them from the worst. Forcing herself to focus, she tucked her phone away and continued making the bed, smoothing the satin duvet with painstaking care. She was good at this, she reminded herself, creating order out of chaos. But no amount of neatly folded sheets could tame the tumult of her life right now. In the end, she repeated a mantra in her head as she worked. James knows. He's not running. He wants to help. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough to keep her poised on the razor's edge of hope for another day. Cautiously, Olivia stepped off the subway that evening, her nerves stretched thin from an unrelenting day. She clutched her bag close, glancing around to ensure no stranger followed her through the crowd. The local news had continued fueling rumors of James Harrington's secret liaison, a swirl of gossip she feared would soon lead straight to her. After a lifetime of modest anonymity, the idea of public exposure terrified her. She inhaled the crisp city air, forcibly calming herself. Right now, she needed to get home to Noah. Her neighbor, Ms. Bernice, had offered to babysit again. Olivia pushed open the entrance to her apartment building, the fluorescent hallway lights flickering erratically. The hum of a distant radio from another unit filled the corridor. When she reached her door, she heard a gentle laugh from inside. Noah's high-pitched giggle. Relief washed over her. She stepped inside to find Ms. Bernice reading a well-worn picture book aloud, her gray hair leaning close to Noah's wide eyes. "Oh, Olivia," Ms. Bernice said softly, marking the page with a finger. "I was just finishing a story for him." "Thank you. I'm sorry for the late hour." Olivia placed her keys on the kitchen counter. "I'll take over now. I'll get out of your way." Ms. Bernice stood up, smoothing her cardigan. Her gaze fell on Olivia's tense expression. "Everything all right, dear? You look a little pale." Olivia mustered a forced smile. "I'm fine. Just a crazy day at work." Ms. Bernice gave her a sympathetic nod but didn't push further. After saying goodnight to Noah, she left. Olivia crouched by her son, brushing back his hair. He looked up at her with that trusting gaze. "Mommy!" His face lit up. "Guess what? I got a star sticker in class for helping clean up the crayons." She gathered him into a hug. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." He beamed, then wrinkled his nose in curiosity. "You smell like the hotel, Mommy, like soap and those little shampoo bottles." She had to laugh at his description. "That's my fancy perfume," she teased, poking his nose affectionately. But the light mood didn't extinguish her deeper concerns. How long would this simple innocence last if cameras started appearing on their doorstep? After Noah was tucked into bed, Olivia went through the motions of tidying up. She was about to settle onto the couch and scroll her phone for any updates from James when a sharp knock startled her. Heart in her throat, she crossed the small living room. "Who is it?" she called softly through the door, hoping not to wake Noah. "It's me," came the familiar deep voice. "James?" She opened the door a crack, shocked to see him standing in the dimly lit hallway, still wearing his tailored suit, rain droplets clinging to his shoulders. Her mind spun. Why would he show up here of all places, risking notice in a simple apartment building? "Oh my God," she hissed, ushering him in quickly before any neighbors peered out. "What are you doing here?" James stepped inside and closed the door gently, his eyes scanning the modest space. "I'm sorry for surprising you," he whispered. "I took precautions. No one followed me." He looked down, contrite. I couldn't wait." His presence filled the small apartment, the contrast between this narrow living room and the grandeur of the Empire Crown's suites stark. He offered a tentative smile. "We haven't had a chance to talk since the gossip started. Are you and Noah okay?" Olivia felt her pulse hammer. "We're fine. But I've been worried about the media, about him." She glanced toward the closed bedroom door. "I put him to bed an hour ago. If he hears you—" She trailed off, watching as James's gaze shifted toward the hallway that led to Noah's room. A surge of conflicting emotions rushed through her. Part of her wanted to let him see their child, watch them bond, but the other part remained guarded, reminding herself that they needed a plan. James took a step closer. "I needed to see you in person," he whispered, voice thick with concern. "The photos might leak any day, and I don't want you blindsided." "My team is working on it, but these bottom-feeder tabloids can be relentless." She rubbed her arms, anxiety gnawing at her. "What should we do?" He considered her question carefully, jaw tightening. "We could try to head it off with a statement before they sensationalize it, but that feels invasive, like we'd be exposing your privacy. And Noah's." Her pulse pounded. She imagined cameras flashing in Noah's face, reporters chasing her down the street. "I don't want him dragged into this," she said, trembling. "He deserves a normal childhood, not some circus." A quiet urgency crept into James's gaze. He gently placed his hands on her shoulders. "I agree. I'm doing everything in my power to stop it. My lawyers can't promise success, but we'll fight. And if it does come out, we can spin it. Keep Noah out of the spotlight. I'll take full responsibility." Olivia studied his features, illuminated by the flickering overhead light. "How do you spin a child out of the spotlight, James? The moment they know you're in a relationship with a hotel maid, they'll dig further. They'll want to know every detail." His grip on her shoulders tightened ever so slightly. "We're not defenseless. We have resources to protect you. Security, private property, court orders. I know this all sounds overwhelming, but I promise I won't let them harm you or Noah." "Resources?" she echoed, her voice tinged with a mixture of resentment and longing. She'd spent years scraping by, rationing every cent. The idea that a wave of James's money could shield them felt both hopeful and humiliating. "I hate that it has to come to this." James's eyes softened. "I'm sorry. If I had known about Noah, maybe we could have avoided all of this, but I'm here now. Let me help." She closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. The tension of the day, her fear, the unfamiliar solace James offered threatened to spill over. When she opened them again, her voice emerged, subdued. "You being here tonight is a huge risk. If someone followed you, took photos—" He shook his head firmly. "My driver circled the block twice and I used a different car. Nobody knows I came." He paused, his gaze flicking toward the bedroom door again. "Is he asleep?" "Yes," she whispered. A fleeting expression of longing crossed James's face. "I wish I could see him, just for a second." Olivia's heart clenched. "He's out like a light. I don't want to disturb him." She half expected James to argue, but he simply nodded, eyes shadowed with disappointment. "I understand." For a moment, they stood in a quiet standoff, two people grappling with the uncharted territory of parenthood, love, and risk. Olivia's tiny living room, filled with second-hand furniture and the faint smell of tonight's dinner, offered a stark contrast to the corporate boardrooms and affluent circles James inhabited. Yet here he was, humility in his posture, a father desperate to protect the son he'd only just discovered. Olivia gestured for him to sit. He perched on the edge of her worn-out couch, glancing at a stack of Noah's picture books. She took a seat across from him, knees brushing the coffee table. The sense of intimacy, of two people bound by an invisible thread made her pulse quicken. She lowered her voice so it wouldn't carry. "So what now?" He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his thighs. "We decide how we want to move forward. We can keep trying to manage the press behind the scenes. But if the worst happens, and they do run photos, I'll hold a press conference stating that you're—" He hesitated, swallowing. "A dear friend, someone I deeply respect. If they ask personal questions, I'll set strict boundaries." A swirl of gratitude and worry speared Olivia. The thought of James publicly claiming a relationship with her, possibly even acknowledging fatherhood, was surreal. And yet the alternative was to hide in fear forever, letting tabloids run rampant with speculation. She fiddled with the fraying edge of the couch cushion. "I don't want to lie, but I'm not sure if we're ready to stand in front of cameras either." She exhaled shakily. "This is all happening so fast." James nodded. "I know, but we don't have time for slow if the media storms in." They stared at each other, both wrestling with the monumental implications. After a beat, Olivia asked quietly, "James, do you truly see yourself staying in our lives long-term, or is this just about damage control?" The question hung in the air, raw with vulnerability. She needed an honest answer. A father's love had to be real. She couldn't bear the idea of James sweeping in only to vanish once the scandal cooled. His eyes glimmered with conviction. "This isn't about damage control. It's about me wanting to be Noah's father, wanting to be there for him. And you. I know it might be hard to believe, considering we've been apart for so long." Her throat constricted with emotion. "I do want you in his life," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But you've missed 6 years. He's not used to having a dad. We have to be gentle with him." A soft warmth spread in James's eyes. "I promise I'll go at his pace, whatever you think is best. I'm not here to rip him from the life you've built." Relief unfurled in her chest, although anxiety lingered. "Thank you," she whispered. "We'll figure it out, together." A faint smile curved James's lips. He reached across the small table, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she placed her palm against his. The contact felt simultaneously comforting and fraught with unspoken possibilities. A swirl of memory tugged her back to the night they first met. Two young souls sharing laughter and fleeting promises. Now they were older, weighed by responsibilities, yet a spark still existed where their hands met. He cleared his throat softly, as if to break the tension. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be another long day." She nodded, removing her hand from his. "You're right. And you should leave before this turns into a bigger risk." They both stood, trading regretful glances. Without words, James stepped to the door. His eyes flicked over the small apartment once more, landing briefly on the closed bedroom door where Noah slept. Then he returned his gaze to her. "Thank you for letting me in," he said quietly, hand on the doorknob. "I'll call you." Olivia just nodded, her heart pounding. "Good night." He slipped out into the dim hallway and she locked the door behind him, leaning against it. The magnitude of everything he'd said pressed against her chest. Fatherhood, media, scandal, blackmail, it was all on the brink of exploding. Yet for the first time she sensed an ally in James, someone willing to shoulder the burden alongside her. As she retreated to her bedroom, she peeked at Noah, sound asleep with a slight smile on his face, maybe dreaming of dinosaurs or a classmate's joke. She touched the doorknob and wondered how he would react when he woke one day to a father, a whole new family dimension. A twinge of hope rose in her, tempered by the knowledge that storms often grew fiercest just before dawn. At that very moment, 2 blocks away, James climbed into a sleek black sedan. The driver offered a polite nod. As the car glided into the street, James's phone buzzed once again, a hidden number. He stared at it for a second, jaw set, before pressing to accept the call. A distorted voice crackled on the line. "You're taking your time, Harrington. Maybe we'll have to escalate." James forced his voice calm. "I don't respond to threats. Name your price." The caller let out a sardonic laugh. "Not just money. There's more you can offer. I'll be in touch." The line went dead. Fury coiled in James's gut, but he swallowed it. He wouldn't let scum like this derail his bond with his newly discovered son. If they wanted a fight, he'd give them one. Nobody would exploit Olivia or Noah. Stealing his resolve, James stared out at the endless rows of lit windows passing by. The city was filled with watchers and schemers, but he intended to protect what mattered most, even if it meant waging a private war. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time in years he felt a purpose beyond boardrooms and profit margins. He was a father now, and fatherhood changed everything. The next morning brought a persistent drizzle that slicked the sidewalks and bathed the city in a muted gray light. Olivia stood at the kitchen counter in her small apartment, stirring oatmeal for Noah before school. The gentle clank of the spoon against the pot did little to soothe her nerves. Her phone lay on the table, and every buzz or ring made her heart jolt. Each notification might bring a fresh crisis, a new twist in this precarious dance with the media. "Mommy?" Noah called from the living room, sounding hopeful. "Do I have time to watch cartoons?" She glanced at the clock. "Just 10 minutes, okay? Then we have to leave." Noah smiled, bouncing off to the small TV set. From the kitchen, Olivia watched him settle onto the couch, hugging a dinosaur plush. Even simple requests like cartoons felt tinged with extra meaning now. How long before curious reporters or photographers disrupted their normal life? Her phone buzzed and she set aside the ladle. She inhaled, steeling herself, then picked it up. A message from James. "Morning. I've arranged a private car for you and Noah today, just in case. It'll wait outside your building at 7:45. Plate number ending in 2Z3. I hope that's okay." She exhaled, relief battling her pride. Accepting help from James still felt strange, but safety for Noah was paramount. "Thank you," she typed back. "We'll use it today. I appreciate it." She hesitated, then added, "Let's talk soon." A beep told her he was already replying. "Anytime. Call me if something comes up." She set the phone down, throat tight. Noah's cheerful chatter in the background reminded her that so much was at stake. She would do anything to keep him safe. If using a private car for a while ensured they stayed off paparazzi radar, then so be it. Precisely at 7:45, Olivia and Noah emerged from the building into a fine drizzle. A sleek, understated car idled by the curb, its black paint glistening. The driver, an older man in a neat cap, stepped out. He gave a respectful nod. "Ms. Roberts, I'm here to take you wherever you need to go." Olivia steered Noah into the back seat, thanking the driver. The quiet hush of the interior, complete with tinted windows, felt worlds away from their usual walk to the subway station or jostling on public transit. Noah's eyes were wide with excitement as he buckled in. "Wow," he breathed. "Is this car yours?" "It's borrowed," Olivia said gently, deciding not to explain more yet. She cast a cautious glance out the window, half expecting cameras to appear. But the street looked ordinary. Just a few people rushing by, umbrellas in hand, heading to work. No suspicious strangers snapping photos. She exhaled. As the car eased into traffic, Noah pressed his face to the window, marveling at how quickly they cut through the city's congestion. Olivia sat tensely, lost in thought. The day's plans included her shift at the hotel and an after-school art program for Noah. She was relieved to know James's driver would be waiting, ready to whisk them away if anything happened. Part of her felt guilty for letting James shoulder the cost. Yet the more practical side of her recognized that this was necessary. When they reached the school, Olivia walked Noah to the entrance, handing him a small umbrella. She crouched down, meeting his eyes. "Be good today, okay?" And if you see anything strange, anyone acting weird, tell your teacher. Then tell me." Noah frowned, tilting his head. "Weird like how?" She fought to keep her voice gentle. "Just, if anybody tries to ask you lots of questions or makes you uncomfortable, I just want you safe." His little eyebrows scrunched in confusion, but he nodded. "Okay, Mommy." Watching him blend into the throng of energetic kids tugged at her heart. She lingered outside a moment longer, scanning the street for any sign of lurking reporters. The drizzle dampened her hair, and the tip of her nose felt cold. Finally, she returned to the waiting car, giving the driver her workplace address. Through the rear window, the city blurred and her stomach churned with an uneasy mix of gratitude and dread. How long until the other shoe dropped? At the Empire Crown, James was already in a private conference room finalizing a video call with his legal team. Documents were spread across the table. NDAs, press statements, letters from tabloids. His attorneys reported they'd successfully suppressed a few gossip column stories in exchange for small, undisclosed payments. But the blackmailer remained elusive. "Money isn't the main objective for them," the lead attorney concluded. "They want leverage, possibly to push you into something else." James's frustration simmered. "Keep searching. I won't be extorted." When the call ended, he leaned back in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose. Stress hammered at his temples. He hated this powerless feeling, particularly when it came to Olivia and Noah's well-being. Was it naive to think he could shield them entirely? Perhaps. But giving up wasn't an option. A soft knock on the door broke his reverie. One of his personal assistants peeked in. "Sir, Ms. Roberts is on her shift in housekeeping. Would you like me to set a private meeting space?" James hesitated. Encountering Olivia in the corridors risked raising suspicion. Yet they needed to talk. "Yes," he decided, standing. "But be subtle. She and I can meet in the manager's office on the 12th floor. Clear the area for, let's say, after lunch rush." The assistant nodded, stepping away with efficient briskness. James straightened his suit jacket in the mirror, eyeing his reflection with a seriousness that felt foreign even to him. So much had changed in mere days. An entire hidden corner of his life had burst into view. Yet beneath the tension, a steadfast determination fueled him. He owed Olivia and Noah more than half measures. Whatever it took, he'd do it. Olivia was in the midst of swapping out towels in a deluxe suite bathroom when her manager discreetly summoned her through the staff radio. "Ms. Roberts, please come to the 12th floor manager's office at noon. VIP request." Her heart fluttered. VIP request. It had to be James. Quickly finishing her tasks, she tidied her cart, making sure no colleague would note her anxiety. By the time she exited the service elevator on the 12th floor, her palms were damp with apprehension. The corridor was unusually quiet. She followed the signs to an office tucked at the end of a short hallway. A lone staffer outside gave her a polite nod, then stepped away, leaving her to knock softly on the door. James's voice invited her in. She slipped inside to find him standing near a small window, arms crossed. The tension on his face melted slightly at the sight of her. She closed the door, turning the lock. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. She noted the neat little office space with a functional desk and chairs, plain walls free of decor. Certainly not the grandeur of his penthouse suite. "I only have a short break," she admitted, "but I'm glad you summoned me. I've been worried too." He motioned for her to sit. She did, resting her hands in her lap, while he lowered himself into the chair across the desk. A hush fell over them, the fluorescent ceiling light a far cry from the atmospheric glow of a high-end lounge. Still, this small office offered privacy, which they desperately needed. Leaning forward, James spoke in a hushed tone. "My lawyers managed to quash some gossip pieces, but the bigger threat remains. The blackmailer refuses to reveal themselves. They hinted at wanting me to influence certain business deals, or they'll release photos and more." Olivia's stomach lurched. Business deals? They're using your private life to extort corporate favors? He nodded, jaw set. It's disgusting and illegal. If I comply, it won't end. These people want a permanent hold over me, over us. Pressing her hands together, Olivia fought down panic. What's to stop them from just publishing everything anyway? His expression darkened. Nothing, realistically. But if I give in, they'd only demand more. He glanced aside, frustration evident. We're scanning company logs, checking if it's an inside leak. But the truth is, it could be anyone who spotted us at the cafe or near your apartment. She closed her eyes briefly, a wave of regret washing over her. If only they'd been more discreet. But who could have predicted they'd be followed? So what do? He exhaled, tension coiling. One option is going public ourselves, releasing a statement on our terms. But that would invite the press to dig deeper, and Noah could become a target. She swallowed, her throat dry. I don't want him in headlines, James. His expression softened. Neither do I. Another option is to weather the storm. Stay quiet, let them bark, and see if they actually publish anything. My attorneys say we could handle it case by case. If photos appear, we serve a cease and desist. If interviews pop up, we shut them down. It might become a constant whack-a-mole game. Weariness tugged at Olivia. That sounds exhausting. I know. He reached across the desk, covering her hand with his. Listen, if they do release something, it'll probably start as rumor. Is James Harrington dating a hotel maid? They might not even realize Noah exists, unless they've managed to take more invasive shots. Her lip trembled. I can handle people gossiping about me, but if they find out about Noah, we'll protect him, James said firmly. At least for now, they seem focused on me and you. In the hallway, faint footsteps passed by, then faded. Olivia glanced at the clock. Her break time was slipping away. She looked back at James, whose intense eyes held a promise of unwavering support. If going public is the best defense, I'll do it. But not yet. Not until we're sure it's necessary. He squeezed her hand gently. Agreed. We'll hold off. I'm ramping up security around you both, just in case. She wanted to protest about the cost, but held her tongue. His protective urge felt genuine. Noah's safe at school now, and there was a driver this morning. Thank you for that. A small smile softened his features. I'm glad you used it. The driver will be on call whenever you need. They locked eyes, sharing a moment of unity in the face of crisis. The ring of a phone somewhere beyond the office door reminded Olivia that her break was nearly over. Reluctantly, she removed her hand from his. I have to get back to work soon. James stood, reluctance mirroring her own. Of course. I'll keep you updated about any developments. She rose, adjusting her housekeeping uniform. Thank you, James, for everything. He nodded, stepping aside as she headed for the door. But before she exited, he murmured her name softly. She turned, heart skipping. Yes? He hesitated, then spoke quietly. Do you think we could arrange a time for me to meet Noah? Properly? An ache of longing and worry pressed at her chest. She managed a faint smile. Let's plan soon. Maybe at the park. Somewhere familiar to him. Not yet, but soon. I promise. James exhaled, relief breaking across his face. Thank you, he whispered. She left, heart pounding. The corridor felt oddly bright compared to the dim hush of the office, and she strode back to her cleaning cart with a new weight in her steps. If everything went according to plan, if the press threat stayed at bay, James might finally meet the child who carried his blood. And in that future moment, she wondered whose heart would break more, James's for lost years, or hers for letting him go once before. When Olivia finished her shift, the driver was waiting again, as promised. She slid into the back seat, glancing nervously over her shoulder. No sign of lurking paparazzi. The car drifted through the city, stopping at Noah's school, where she spotted him chatting with a classmate. As soon as he saw her, he waved. The driver kept the engine running as Noah clambered in, glowing with excitement. "Mommy, we're riding this car again?" His grin lit up the space. "Yes, sweetie, it's a friend's car," she explained softly. "We'll do this for a while, okay?" "Cool." Noah leaned back, enthralled by the plush seats. He rattled on about his day, how he painted a big triceratops, how Ms. Carlson said he had a talent for colors. Olivia listened with rapt attention, though a part of her mind was miles away, locked on the swirl of threats looming over them. They headed home. Once inside their apartment, Olivia double-checked the locks. She set aside her phone on the counter, noticing a short text from James. "Any trouble?" She typed a quick reply. "None so far, just got home. Thank you." As the evening routine settled, Noah's homework, a simple dinner, story time, Olivia felt a fragile sort of peace. But well past midnight, she found herself wide awake on the couch, the flicker of the street light outside casting faint patterns on the walls. What if the blackmailer escalated? What if they discovered Noah's name and face? In the stillness, she heard Noah's gentle breathing from the bedroom, the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic. She recalled the promise she and James had made, "We'll do this together." Somehow, the thought of facing this crisis hand in hand was less terrifying than facing it alone. Eventually, she moved to check on Noah, pressing a light kiss to his forehead. Then she whispered a silent plea into the darkness that whoever lurked in the shadows would remain ignorant of the child sleeping so peacefully, and that the father who had so unexpectedly stepped back into their lives would keep his vow. Because in a world of swirling secrets and sharpened headlines, the fiercest battles were often fought in the simplest of places: a small apartment, a father's yearning, and a mother's unwavering resolve to protect her child. Dawn broke under a pale sky dotted with restless clouds. Olivia felt the weight of an unspoken countdown in the atmosphere, an invisible timer ticking down to when or if the blackmailer would break the story. She tried to focus on her morning routine, guiding Noah through breakfast, ensuring he was prepared for school, and dressing in her housekeeping uniform. Yet a knot of apprehension refused to loosen in her stomach. Outside, the driver once again waited with the sleek black car. Olivia shot a cautious glance along the street, scanning for any sign of lurking photographers. Satisfied by the seemingly empty sidewalk, she coaxed Noah inside. Their journey unfolded in tense silence, broken only by Noah's excited chatter about an upcoming class field trip. Olivia responded automatically, smiling at all the right moments, yet her thoughts churned with anxiety. Once the driver dropped her off at the Empire Crown, she headed to the staff locker room. As she pinned on her name badge, she noticed hushed conversations among her co-workers, a few sneaking, curious looks her way. Did they suspect something? Gossip had a way of permeating large workplaces, especially in a high-end hotel frequented by VIPs. "Morning, Olivia," a familiar colleague said, giving her a once-over. "Everything all right? You seem a bit on edge." She forced a small laugh. "Oh, just life. You know how it is." She evaded more questions by busying herself with the day's housekeeping schedules. At least for now, no one confronted her directly. She'd have to keep her head down and do her work as usual. Still, the manager assigned her to the lower floors that day, perhaps to avoid placing her near James's suite. She was both relieved and disappointed. Relieved at not having to navigate prying eyes, disappointed she wouldn't see James face to face for reassurance. Up on the top floor, however, James paced before a panoramic window in his private suite. His phone was pressed tight to his ear. "I need answers," he snapped. "Any leads at all?" One of his investigators cleared his throat on the other end. "We've discovered that someone sold pictures of you and Ms. Roberts meeting in that cafe. Those pictures haven't surfaced yet, but they're definitely in circulation. The buyer's identity remains hidden behind shell companies." James's jaw clenched. "And the blackmailer? Same circle?" "Likely," the investigator acknowledged. "But we can't confirm. We suspect they'll try to time the release for maximum impact." Fury simmered in James's veins. Keep digging. I don't care how many people you have to hire or how much it costs. Do it fast." He ended the call and exhaled slowly, trying to quell the sense of helplessness. The cityscape outside sprawled like a glittering grid, indifferent to personal crises. If only he could snap his fingers and eradicate the threat. But wealth couldn't always chase away vultures, especially when they smelled an even bigger payday if they held out. He forced himself to refocus on immediate tasks. With a quick glance in the mirror, he straightened his suit jacket and strode out the door, determined to keep a calm front for an upcoming business presentation. Inside, however, a storm brewed. Worry about Olivia, about Noah, and about a truth he might soon have to share with the entire world. By mid-afternoon, Olivia was scrubbing the marble bathroom floor of a mid-tier suite when her phone vibrated in her pocket. She carefully rinsed her hands, dried them on a towel, and checked the screen. A text from James. "Any issues? Everything under control?" She quietly typed back, "All okay here. Just working. You?" His response came seconds later. "Hectic, but I'm fine. Will you be safe to pick up Noah alone, or should the driver stay?" She paused, biting her lip. Accepting daily help tugged at her pride, but safety was more important than her ego. "Driver, please," she wrote. "I'm worried about possible photos. I can't risk it." "Understood," he replied. "Stay vigilant." She pocketed her phone, returning to her task, but her mind remained unsettled. She couldn't deny a flicker of gratitude for James's protective streak. In an ideal world, she'd handle everything herself, but this was no ordinary problem. Later, the driver escorted her to Noah's school again. She maintained a steady, watchful gaze, worried about potential strangers lurking with cameras. Once Noah clambered into the car, happily droning about dinosaur stickers, the driver guided them home. That evening, however, was different. Shortly after Olivia set out dinner, simple grilled cheese sandwiches, her phone buzzed with a message from her manager requesting she attend an urgent meeting first thing the next morning. Anxiety rippled through her. Urgent meeting could mean anything. Was she under scrutiny at work? Pushing aside her worry, she helped Noah with a small reading assignment, then read him a bedtime story. When he was safely asleep, she retreated to the couch, phone in hand, bracing for whatever the next day might bring. Morning came too soon. With Ms. Bernice watching Noah, Olivia took a cab, paid for by James's arrangement, to the Empire Crown earlier than usual. Her heart pounded with dread as she rode the staff elevator to the manager's office on the second floor. The corridor was eerily quiet at that hour. The manager, Mr. Davidson, an older man with a precise manner, sat behind his desk, frowning at a document. He gestured for Olivia to close the door. She obeyed, noticing another woman from Human Resources perched in a corner. The atmosphere reeked of formalities, and Olivia's stomach twisted. "Thank you for coming in," Mr. Davidson began, folding his hands on the desk. "There have been concerns raised recently." Olivia's heart sank. Concerns. That word rarely preceded anything good. "Concerns, sir?" He gave a stiff nod. "It's come to our attention that you've been in personal contact with a high-profile guest, Mr. James Harrington. We've also had inquiries from certain tabloids asking about an employee named Olivia Roberts." Her throat dried. So the secrets were unraveling faster than anticipated. I'm sorry if that's caused any trouble," she managed, voice unsteady. "I never—" The HR woman lifted a hand, a placating gesture. "We're not accusing you of misconduct, Ms. Roberts. However, in our employee handbook, there are guidelines about maintaining professional boundaries with guests, especially VIPs. Olivia swallowed, a wave of defensiveness flaring. "I understand the guidelines, but She stopped short. She couldn't possibly explain the real reason behind her connection to James in front of these people, not without risking a chain reaction of press exposure and 1,000 follow-up questions. Mr. Davidson sighed. "Look, your work record here has been excellent. We're not looking to terminate you. but the hotel must maintain its image. We can't afford scandal. If the press links you romantically to a guest, it might reflect poorly on the hotel's reputation." Her mind reeled at the irony. This was no fling. It was the father of her child. But how could she tell them that? "I understand," she said meekly. The HR representative leaned forward. "We're prepared to transfer you to an off-site role temporarily, perhaps in our laundry facility or administrative support, until this dies down." A knot of anxiety twisted in Olivia's chest. "So I'm being reassigned?" "For a while," Mr. Davidson confirmed. "We believe it's best for everyone involved, including you, to remove any further speculation. You'll retain your pay and the position is still under the hotel's umbrella." Her head spun. This was a thinly veiled way of saying hide in the back so you don't embarrass us. Maybe they thought it would protect her, but it felt more like punishment. Yet Olivia sensed she had no choice. Arguing would only draw more scrutiny, possibly cost her the job she desperately needed. She forced her voice steady. "All right, I'll accept the transfer." Mr. Davidson exhaled, relieved. "We'll finalize details by tomorrow. In the meantime, you can finish your housekeeping shift today, then report to HR for instructions." She nodded numbly, standing to leave. The HR woman offered a tight smile as if to say sorry, but that's business. Escaping into the hallway, Olivia felt a cold wave of humiliation and frustration. She hustled past curious co-workers, pretending not to see their inquisitive glances. The irony burned. She had done nothing wrong. All she had was a connection no one could understand, one that bound her to a man whose world cast a punishing spotlight. James was mid-conference call when he saw a message from Olivia. "They're transferring me off-site. We need to talk." His gut clenched. Immediately he ended the call, telling the perplexed corporate partners he had an urgent matter to attend to. He reached for his phone, stepping into a quiet corner of the corridor. Dialing Olivia, he listened to it ring until her shaky voice answered. "James?" "What happened?" he demanded, voice low, scanning for anyone eavesdropping. She recounted the manager's words, her reassignment, the implied scandal. Rage flared in James's chest. "That's absurd. They can't punish you for having a personal life. I'll talk to them." "Don't," Olivia pleaded. "It'll only confirm their suspicions if you intervene. They'll say I asked you to pull strings or something. I can't lose this job, James." He closed his eyes, forcing composure. "All right, if that's what you want. But I hate that they're doing this to you." She exhaled a soft, humorless laugh. "Welcome to my reality." His heart twisted. "Is there anything I can do?" She hesitated. "Just help me figure out what we do next about the press. If they find out more and see I've been transferred, it'll fan the flames." James nodded, jaw tight. "Then we move swiftly. My team can craft a narrative, but we still need to keep Noah out of it. Let's meet tonight? Somewhere safe?" "All right," she agreed. "After I pick Noah up, Ms. Bernice can watch him again. Text me when you have a plan." They said goodbye, tension thick in the silence that followed. James clenched his phone, anger simmering. He would not let the hotel treat Olivia as though she were some disposable employee. Nor would he allow rumors to dictate their lives. If his name carried weight, perhaps it was time to use it strategically, if only to protect her, though he'd respect her wish not to intervene directly with her boss. That evening, Olivia found herself waiting in a discreet booth of a dimly lit bistro James had chosen. She'd left Noah safe with Ms. Bernice, took the private car to a side entrance, and slipped in unnoticed. Her nerves thrummed. She was about to conspire with a billionaire on how to manipulate public perception. It felt surreal. James arrived a few minutes later, a subdued yet determined set to his shoulders. After greeting her with a gentle touch to her elbow, he slid into the booth opposite her. Candlelight flickered over the table, casting wavering shadows. "Thank you for meeting me here," he murmured, voice hushed. "I've checked. No paparazzi in sight. At least not yet." She nodded, her pulse skittering. "That's good." A waiter approached, but James waved him off politely, ordering just water for them both. Once alone, he leaned in, eyes serious. "First, I'm sorry about your job transfer. It's unfair." Her jaw tightened. "I can't fight it. I need the income." He drummed his fingers on the table, gaze flickering. "Then let's talk about a strategy. My legal team suggests that if the tabloids are poised to release photos or speculation, we could try to release a controlled statement. We're friends, met by chance, no scandal. Possibly mention we're working on some project or philanthropic angle, just enough to deflect. But I don't want to lie outright if there's a risk of deeper investigations." She swallowed. "And if they push back? Dig into my background, find out about Noah?" James clasped his hands. "We'll maintain that your private life is off limits. My lawyers can file injunctions. But we have to accept that the more we try to quash rumors, the more they might pry." Her eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. "So we're stuck. Either hide or feed the beast." He reached across to gently grasp her hand. "We can't fully hide, but we can starve the beast. Give them something bland, not worth chasing. That's how these stories die. They move on to juicier prey." A shaky breath escaped her. "I'll do whatever protects Noah." Their gazes locked, a shared resolve in the midst of uncertainty. The bistro's low hum of conversation and soft music underscored their private tension. James had never felt so acutely the burden of being who he was, with a name that commanded headlines. Meanwhile, Olivia struggled with the injustice of being sidelined at her workplace for daring to have a connection beyond society's expectations. "Once this initial scare passes," he said quietly, "we can decide when and how I meet Noah properly. For now, we keep him out of every conversation." She nodded, teeth biting her lower lip. "Agreed." A hush stretched between them. It was a rare moment. No urgent housekeeping tasks, no corporate calls. Just two parents forging a plan to navigate a crisis. Overhead, the dim pendant light cast a warm glow that caught the flicker of emotion in Olivia's eyes. Quietly, James said, "I keep thinking about the day I finally talk to him. I imagine what he'll say, if he'll even want me around. I've missed so much." A pang lanced through Olivia's chest. "He's a sweet boy, James. Curious, full of love. But he might need time to understand who you are. To him, the idea of a father is just stories." He nodded, sorrow etched in his features. "Stories I should have been part of, from the beginning." Gently, she squeezed his hand. "We can't change the past, but we can decide how we go forward." They exchanged a tender moment of understanding before practical matters reclaimed them. They spent the next half hour refining their approach, brainstorming how to confirm a benign friendship narrative if pressed. Neither liked lying, but a half-truth might be necessary to guard Noah's identity. Eventually, James glanced at the time. "I should get you back," he said softly, signaling the waiter for the check. "It's late and Bernice can't watch Noah forever." They stood, a quiet tension coiled between them, something deeper than mere conversation. Outside, the night air clung with a slight chill. The driver waited at the curb, headlights illuminating the damp sidewalk. Olivia wrapped her coat tighter around herself, turning to James. "Thank you," she said, "for tonight, for helping me figure it out." He rested a hand gently on her shoulder. "We're in this together, Olivia." A fleeting ache to hug him rose in her, but she resisted, mindful of any passing camera. Instead, she managed a small, grateful smile, then slipped into the back seat. Through the window, she watched James stand there, solemn, until the car merged into the flow of traffic and he was lost from sight. On the drive home, her stomach fluttered with a mix of dread for tomorrow's uncertainties and a sliver of comfort in James's unwavering presence. At least they had a plan, such as it was. With the blackmailer looming, her job precarious, and the reality of introducing James to Noah still on the horizon, Olivia felt far from settled. Yet, a flicker of hope emerged. They were no longer alone in this battle. Whatever came next, scandal, half-truths, or guarded acceptance, they would face it side by side, bound not by mere rumor, but by a child who deserved the best of both of them. The morning sky bled a pale lavender as the city roused to another day of countless possibilities and unseen perils. Olivia stood in her apartment's cramped living room, watching Noah finish a dinosaur-themed puzzle on the coffee table. Her stomach felt knotted with nerves, though she tried to mask it behind a reassuring smile for her son. They had stayed up a bit late the previous night. Between homework and Olivia's tension, bedtime had stretched longer than usual, but Noah seemed as bright and curious as ever, humming happily to himself. Meanwhile, a swirl of dread reminded Olivia that at any moment the blackmailer might strike, or the tabloids might spin new headlines. She checked her phone repeatedly, half expecting a message from James about a sudden development. Nothing came. No calls from the hotel manager, no urgent text about a breaking article. For now, it was an uneasy calm. "Mommy," Noah piped up, scowling at the puzzle pieces. "I'm missing a piece. It's the T-Rex's tail." She crouched to help him, scanning the floor. "Let's see. Maybe it fell under the couch." Sure enough, a small puzzle piece poked out near the baseboard. She nudged it free, passing it to him. "Here you go, bud." "Thanks." He slotted the piece in with a triumphant grin. "All done." Pride glowed in Olivia's chest. She had built this life around Noah, protecting him, raising him with as much joy as possible despite hardship. Now that James knew of his son's existence, the vision of their future had changed forever. Yet beneath the fear of exposure, she felt the stirrings of relief that she no longer carried the burden alone. A few hours later, Olivia found herself waiting in a dingy administrative office on the outskirts of the hotel property. Her reassignment was made official that morning, and she'd been directed to report here, a far cry from the bustling corridors and polished suites she was used to. Flickering fluorescent lights made the small, windowless room feel claustrophobic. Stacks of old files and cleaning schedules occupied metal shelves. A supervisor droned on about her new tasks. She'd handle laundry inventories, data entry, and occasional supply runs to various sister properties. It was stable work, but a demotion in spirit, if not in pay. She nodded mechanically, pen scribbling notes. While the supervisor stepped away, her phone vibrated. She shot a quick glance around before checking the screen. "James. Hope you're okay. I'm dealing with more behind the scenes. Might have news soon. Hang in there." Warmth filled her chest at the simple encouragement. "Thank you. I'm at the new department now," she replied, keeping my head down. She closed the phone, inhaling to maintain composure. "At least I still have a job," she reminded herself, even if it felt like an exile from the place she'd begun to call her own. The afternoon trickled by in tedious tasks, logging laundry orders, reorganizing supply records. Olivia's eyes burned from the computer screen's glare. She missed the liveliness of housekeeping, the sense of motion, even if it was physically tiring. Here, the hours dragged, her mind spinning with what-if scenarios about tabloids or blackmailers. Finally, her shift ended. With anxious relief, she gathered her things and left the building, bracing for potential cameras. She spotted James's hired car at the curb. The driver offered a polite nod, and she slipped into the back seat. No suspicious strangers lurked with cameras, at least none she could see. "School?" the driver asked, confirming her usual routine. She nodded, hugging her purse to her chest. "Yes, please." They wove through congested streets until the car halted outside Noah's small school building. Her heart seized momentarily. No cameras. Good. She thanked the driver and walked quickly to the entrance, scanning the area. Parents milled around, children bounded out with backpacks bouncing. And then there was Noah, his dark hair and bright smile easy to spot. "Mommy!" he exclaimed, racing over. "Guess what? I got another star sticker!" She beamed at him, kneeling to examine the little golden star on his shirt. "You're turning into the star sticker champion," she teased, mussing his hair. He giggled, but suddenly his gaze darted behind her, curiosity sparking. "Mommy, who's that man?" Her heart lurched. She turned to see James standing a short distance away, hands in his pockets, wearing a casual jacket and baseball cap, clearly trying to blend in. A protective driver or security agent lingered at the curb, watchful. Her pulse rocketed. Had they agreed on this? No, he hadn't mentioned meeting them here. Before she could respond, James approached, smiling gently. "Hey, Olivia," he greeted. Then, looking at Noah, he knelt to the child's height. "Hi there," he said quietly, voice warm but subdued, as if aware of the precariousness of the moment. "You must be Noah." Noah blinked, inching closer to his mother. "Mommy?" he asked, uncertain. Olivia's nerves buzzed. She placed a reassuring hand on Noah's shoulder. "Noah, this is my friend, James," she managed, eyes flicking between them. They'd planned to make an introduction in a calmer setting, an afternoon at the park, or maybe over ice cream. But James was here, a real presence, and backing away now would only frighten Noah. Noah stared at James with open curiosity. "Hi," he said shyly, hugging Olivia's arm. James's smile was tempered by raw emotion. "It's nice to meet you. I've heard you like dinosaurs a lot." A spark of interest lit Noah's eyes. "Uh-huh. Triceratops is my favorite," he said in a small, polite voice. Olivia's throat tightened. This wasn't how she envisioned the moment, but perhaps there was no perfect script. She glanced around, aware of other parents passing. Some offered polite smiles or curious glances, but no one seemed to recognize James in his low-key disguise. I didn't realize you'd be here," she murmured to James, trying to keep her tone gentle. He nodded, keeping his gaze on Noah to avoid making the boy uneasy. "I couldn't wait any longer. I just wanted to see you both. We can go slow." Noah looked up at his mother. "Can he ride with us?" Her heart twisted. "Sure," she said quietly, taking a leap of faith. She gestured toward the waiting car. "Let's get going." James shot her a grateful look, then stood. He offered his hand, and though Noah hesitated, he eventually took it, small fingers curling around James's larger ones. Olivia watched them walk side by side, a swirl of astonishment and tenderness enveloping her. This is happening, she realized. No more illusions, no more abstract father figure. Once inside the car, they settled with Noah in the middle seat, Olivia on one side and James on the other. The driver set off. Silence reigned for a few blocks until Noah, ever curious, piped up, "James, do you like dinosaurs too?" James smiled, the tension in his posture easing. "I do, especially T-Rexes. They have those tiny arms, but they're fierce." Noah's face lit. "Yes, they're so strong. Did you know a T-Rex tooth can be this big?" He spread his arms animatedly. James laughed softly, nodding with genuine delight. "That's huge," he agreed, casting Olivia a quick glance, an unspoken acknowledgement of how special this moment was. They continued chatting as the car navigated the streets. Olivia listened in quiet awe, tears prickling behind her eyes. She had worried Noah might feel shy or scared. Instead, James's gentle presence seemed to inspire an easy, childlike curiosity in their son. She realized just how much she'd underestimated Noah's openness. When the driver pulled up outside their apartment, Olivia hesitated, turning to James. "Do you want to come up?" she offered softly, her pulse pounding. Noah was already clamoring to show his drawings. James glanced at the window, scanning the sidewalk. "It looks clear," he said. "If you're okay with it, yes." Olivia nodded. She wanted to be sure no paparazzi lay in wait, but it seemed quiet enough. So they climbed out, Olivia holding Noah's hand, James following closely. They entered the building, trudging up the worn stairs. Her heart hammered at how intimate it felt having James walk these corridors, a stark contrast to the life of lavish suites he was used to. Inside the apartment, Noah wasted no time, dragging James to see his small art desk near the window. Papers covered in dinosaur sketches spilled across the tabletop. "This is my Spinosaurus," Noah announced proudly, pointing to a colorful crayon drawing. "And this is my Stegosaurus. See the plates?" James crouched beside him, studying each drawing as if it were fine art. "You're really good at this," he said, awe creeping into his voice. "They look amazing." Noah beamed, inching closer. "Want to color with me?" James glanced at Olivia, who hovered in the doorway, smiling in spite of her nerves. She gave him a nod. He turned back to Noah. "Sure, show me how, okay?" They settled on the floor, rummaging for crayons. Noah began instructing James on how to sketch a simple T-Rex outline. A wave of emotion threatened to overwhelm Olivia as she watched them side by side. Noah's small hand guiding James's larger one, giggles erupting when the T-Rex came out a bit crooked. It was a scene so heartbreakingly normal she could hardly believe it was real. At one point, Noah frowned at James's attempt. "That arm is too long," he said matter-of-factly, causing James to chuckle. "I guess it's not a real T-Rex then," James teased, adjusting his drawing. Olivia leaned against the wall, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. She'd spent 6 years imagining what fatherhood might look like for Noah, only to bury those hopes under practical survival. Now, it felt like a door had cracked open, letting in a warm, unexpected light. Eventually, James glanced up, catching her gaze. His expression spoke volumes, a mixture of gratitude, wonder, and lingering sadness for all the moments missed. She moved closer, placing a gentle hand on Noah's shoulder. "Hey, buddy, it's almost dinner time. Maybe James can stay for a bit." Noah's eyes widened. "Yeah, we can show him the puzzle and my dino books." James looked to Olivia for confirmation, and she answered with a hesitant yet affirming nod. "We can do that. Just for a while," she said softly, the subtext clear. This was a first step. Not a grand unveiling of paternal identity, but for now it was enough. They moved to the living area. Olivia prepped a quick meal while James and Noah reviewed the finished T-Rex drawing, engaging in more dinosaur banter. The entire apartment felt different, lighter, filled with a collective curiosity and cautious joy. When plates of simple spaghetti were ready, they gathered around the small kitchen table. Noah chattered away, bouncing from topic to topic. James asked gentle questions, soaking up every detail like a starving man tasting food for the first time. Olivia joined in, her voice trembling occasionally from the emotional weight of it all. Halfway through dinner, Noah paused mid-bite. "James, are you going to come back again?" he asked, innocence shining in his eyes. James set down his fork, glancing at Olivia for guidance. She swallowed hard, sensing the importance of his next words. "I hope so," James said, voice earnest. "But only if it's okay with your mom." Noah looked to Olivia, who forced a reassuring smile. "I think that could be arranged," she said quietly, heart twisting with relief and fear. Noah grinned, returning to his pasta, oblivious to the storm of adult concerns swirling around him. But Olivia and James exchanged a look, an unspoken understanding that they were treading a narrow path. For now, they were calling James a friend. But one day soon, they would need to reveal the truth. Could they keep the media at bay until then? After dinner, James helped clear the dishes, a small, everyday gesture that felt monumental in its intimacy. Once the plates were stacked by the sink, he caught Olivia's eye in the kitchen. "Thank you," he murmured, voice low. "This evening, I'll never forget it." She swallowed the tightness in her throat. "Me neither." A small, warm moment blossomed between them before Noah burst into the kitchen, brandishing crayons and a half-drawn dinosaur. The moment evaporated, replaced by a gentle laughter as they tried to manage the boys' excitement. Eventually, the hour grew late. James stood by the door, shrugging on his jacket. Noah, yawning, clung to Olivia's side. "You can come back, right?" he asked James sleepily. James knelt to Noah's level, ruffling his hair gently. "Count on it," he said softly. "I'll see you soon, okay?" Noah nodded, blinking heavy-lidded eyes. "Okay. Bye, James." Olivia walked him to the hallway. They lingered at the door, speaking in hushed tones. "This was wonderful," Olivia whispered, her heart pounding with gratitude and apprehension. "But we have to be careful. No paparazzi yet, but—" James nodded, voice grave. "I'll double-check security. Trust me, I'll do everything I can to keep this private. But if they catch wind, we'll deal with it." She clasped her hands, swallowing. "Thank you," she said, her voice nearly breaking. "You were great with him." His gaze softened, longing in his eyes. "He's amazing," he murmured. "I just wish I'd known sooner." She nodded, tears threatening. "So do I." A loaded pause settled between them, thick with unspoken apologies and hopes. James gently squeezed her hand in farewell, then slipped out into the hallway. Olivia locked the door behind him, heart throbbing. She returned to the living room to find Noah sprawled on the couch, half asleep, crayons scattered. Carefully, she scooped him up and carried him to his bed, tucking him under the covers. As she studied his peaceful face, the enormity of everything pressed in. Their life had changed irreversibly, and for the better, she cautiously believed. Yet the question remained. Could they preserve this fragile happiness against the looming threat of exposure? Elsewhere in the city, the blackmailer prepared another message, finalizing attachments of incriminating photos. In the next day or two, a wave of headlines might erupt, shredding the delicate bubble of secrecy James and Olivia struggled to maintain. But in the hush of the apartment, where Noah slept with a gentle rise and fall of his small chest, Olivia allowed herself a faint, hopeful smile. Tonight had been more than she dared dream. If father and son could share crayons and conversation without the world intruding, perhaps there was a chance for a genuine family bond to form. Treading softly, she retreated to the dimly lit kitchen. Tired as she was, sleep felt distant. She couldn't erase the day's triumph or the mounting sense of approaching turmoil. Yet, with her heart warmed by the image of James and Noah together, she dared to believe they might navigate the upcoming storm. Because for the first time, they faced it not as strangers, but as parents determined to protect the child they both loved more than life itself. And that, she told herself, might just be enough to see them through. Headlines or not, blackmail or not, they were a family waiting to be recognized, and love was the strongest shield they had. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.